Empire of Steel. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 376. Feng Deshi is walking on the streets of Qingzhou looking at the clean concrete roads in Qingzhou City. He stomped hard. Oh, this cement road is really hard. The cement road was not finished when I came last time, but now it's all finished. Xiao Ming smiled. Feng Deshi arrived, and it is estimated that the news of Shanhaiguan also reached Chang'an after he got the news that Shanhaiguan was conquered. He sent the news to Chang'an through the post station, which was another big news after the great victory of Jizhao. He led Feng Deshi around Qingzhou City and watched the cement road in Qingzhou City. Xiao Ming took Feng Deshi to see the underground pipes in the city. Now there is a manhole cover at intervals on the level road in Qingzhou. This is the manhole cover of the underground pipeline. Now the underground pipelines of the whole Qingzhou City have been connected to the network. All the sewage in the city leads to the huge septic tank outside the city, where it is deposited into fertilizer. Feng Shilin, you will definitely be satisfied with the Wei family restaurant this time. Xiao Ming led Feng Deshi to the Wei family restaurant this time. Feng Deshi came to Qingzhou naturally to let Xiao Ming go to Chang'an. According to Feng Deshi, Xiao Wangsun asked him to arrive in Chang'an 1 month before the wedding to prepare for the wedding. He came to Qingzhou several times, and Feng Deshi and Xiao Ming became more and more familiar with each other. Therefore, it is better to say that he came to Qingzhou to play. So after conveying the meaning of the imperial decree to Xiao Ming along the way, Feng Deshi didn't care about anything because of this. He will send Feng Deshi to the Wei family restaurant, where he can eat, drink and play. His Royal Highness, the old slave, is still thinking about the toilet last time. How is it now? Feng Deshi asked expectantly. Xiao Ming pretended to be mysterious and said to Feng Deshi, Feng Shilin will know when he goes up, and I guarantee that Feng Shilin will linger after all. Xiao Wangsun took Feng Shilin to the Xianzahao guest room of the Wei family restaurant during the time when Xiao Ming was busy with the war. The construction of Qingzhou did not stop, it was still in progress, and the Weijia restaurant was the focus of the construction. After all, Xiao Ming wanted to make Weijia restaurant a landmark restaurant in Qingzhou. Entering the Xianzahao guest room, Feng Deshi was surprised at this time. The floor of the Xianzahao guest room was covered with a thick blanket, and in the center of the blanket was a huge bed. Both the sheets and the quilt were pure brown. The surface of the silk quilt was embroidered with beautiful patterns. Makes people very comfortable. The most important thing is that there is a small house enclosed by glass in the guest room. There is a toilet in the middle of the small house, and there is a huge porcelain basin. There is a huge mirror opposite the porcelain basin. Under the mirror is also a white ceramic, and there is a copper thing on the ceramic. Your Highness, what is all this? Feng Deshi was shocked at this moment. The last time it was just the toilet. He was shocked, and now something like this comes out of this room. Moreover, the windows of this Wei family restaurant turned from oiled paper to transparent glass. Oh my god, all the windows are made of glass. Feng Shilin has seen the toilet, and the rest is the bathtub, the faucet, and the mirror. I don't need to introduce it. Xiao Ming looked proud. With the cooperation of various workshops, there is now enough capacity to create a room similar to a modern hotel. The only shortcoming now is that there is no electricity. In addition, Weijia restaurant is basically no different from modern hotels, or even more luxurious. After all, it is no problem to produce faucets with the current Qingzhou craftsmanship. It is even easier to produce various ceramic utensils, and mirrors are even better from this. A modern bathroom appeared, with perfume and soap in the bathroom, and living here is an absolute pleasure. Feng Deshi only came at noon, wandered around Qingzhou Army in the afternoon, and it was already evening when he arrived at Weijia restaurant. As the saying goes, experience comes first, so Xiao Ming said, Feng Shilin, this king will not disturb your rest. The food, clothing, housing and transportation are all available here. Feng Shilin can stay as long as he wants, and this king will not accompany you. Feng Deshi was already stupid, he didn't care what Xiao Ming said, just nodded. Xiao Ming smiled and left with Zhao Long and Zhao Hu. When he got downstairs, he said to the shopkeeper, take good care of this Feng Shilin. The reputation of the Wei family restaurant will depend on him to bring him to Chang'an. Yes, Your Highness, you can rest easy. The shopkeeper laughed and went up with a menu. Of course, this menu is also invented by Xiao Ming. In the past, restaurants used to report the names of the dishes to the guests one by one, but now it is directly for the menu. The menu clearly states the ingredients of the dishes, which is very transparent. Xiao Ming nodded. This time back, since Feng Deshi was here, He was going to Chang'an. Before going to Chang'an, he had to take matters into his own hands, so after sharing the benefits with the merchants, he discussed the title with Pang Yukin. After all, this matter is very serious. If the distribution is uneven, it will easily affect the dissatisfaction of those who have merit. After Xiaoming left, the shopkeeper went to the Xianzhihao room and said to Feng Shilin, "Feng Shilin, it's getting late. I don't know what Feng Shilin needs to eat. This is the menu. Please order." Feng Shilin ordering, "Hey, this is a new word in Qingzhou." Feng Deshu was curious. He took the menu and saw a dazzling array of dish names, many of which he did not know. A little embarrassed, Feng Deshu coughed and said, "The Say family likes spicy food, so I need to put more cornel." "Hey, Feng Shilin, if you like spicy food, here's a dish you definitely like to eat. This is spicy chicken, but our spicy is not dogwood, but chili pepper." "What is this?" Feng Deshu had never heard of it before, and the spicy flavor of Dao Kingdom was all cornel. The shopkeeper smiled and said, "This chili pepper was brought back by His Highness from overseas. It is extremely spicy, but the dish made is extremely delicious, and Feng Shilin will naturally understand it later." As soon as he arrived in Qingzhou, Feng Deshu immediately felt a little like a douchebag, and he stopped asking questions to hide his ignorance and embarrassment. Then he continued to look at the menu and ordered 12 dishes such as braised pork and steamed sea bass. In the palace, his meals were always good, so when he arrived in Qingzhou, he was used to many dishes go down with the menu. And soon the first spicy chicken will be served. Feng Deshu was a little surprised when he looked at the green peppers in the dish. When the dish was served, he could smell a strong spicy taste licking his lips. He took a bite of spicy chicken into his mouth with an attitude of trying and chewed it carefully. Immediately, his eyes straightened. The spicy chicken was very spicy, and his saliva poured out. The thick spicy flavor wrapped in the meaty aroma irritated his tongue and made him unable to stop. "It's really spicy and delicious." Feng Deshu was shocked. Chapter 377. Feng Shilin, eat slowly. This really good thing is still to come. Wei Chengmo waited beside Feng Deshu before Xiaoming left. He did not dare to be vague. This Wei family restaurant used to be famous in Qingzhou City, but it was far from being as prosperous as it is now. The reason why the gap is so big is because the government has spent a lot of money to renovate the Weijia restaurant. After acquiring the Weijia restaurant, this change happened right under his nose. In addition to decorating the Wei family restaurant according to what King Qi said, the most important thing is that the chef of the Wei family restaurant learned a lot of delicious dishes from the dining room of King Qi's mansion. It was after this that the Weijia restaurant became a must-see for businessmen from other places. Feng Deshu's mouth was hip-hop, which was hot with chili peppers. He has always liked spicy food very much, because cornel is used in almost every dish, but even so, it gradually could not satisfy his taste. Until today, he did not understand what real spicy food is. Wiping his mouth contentedly, Feng Deshu looked satisfied, and he said, "This chili is really spicy enough. Hey, how can I eat after I eat this spicy chicken?" Feng Deshu's heartbroken look made Wei Chengmo feel a little proud. 2 years ago, when businessmen from other places came to Qingzhou, they always disliked the embarrassment of Qingzhou, but now the attitude of businessmen has taken a big turn. Feng Shilin, this is not easy, as long as you stay in Qingzhou for a few more days. Wei Chengmo said with a smile. Feng Deshu shook his head. The Say family wants to live in Qingzhou, but the emperor's life is involuntarily, which is a pity. When the two were talking, 2 more dishes were served. One was spicy tofu and the other was braised carp, both of which were served with peppers. Feng Deshu's eyes lit up when he saw it, and he immediately moved his chopsticks. After eating dinner for half an hour, Feng Deshu could barely walk. He couldn't finish the 12 dishes, but because it was too delicious, he ate a lot of almost every dish. Seeing that it was completely dark outside the restaurant, the red lanterns in the restaurant began to light up because of the lack of electricity. The effect of this restaurant at night will be greatly reduced, so Xiaoming asked the Wei family restaurant to increase the number of lanterns. As a result, at night, the restaurant is also open all night. Let the second shopkeeper clean up the tableware, and then Wei Chengmo said to Feng Deshu, "Feng Shilin, it's getting late. I taught you how to use the bathroom," and the boy retired. Feng Deshu nodded. He had been looking forward to this for a long time. At this time, Wei Chengmo took Feng Deshu into the bathroom and explained to him how to use the utensils one by one before leaving the Xianzhihao guest room. Seeing that all the outsiders were gone, Feng Deshu immediately showed a childlike naughty smile. He turned on the faucet in front of the sink, and the water immediately flowed down. This Wei family restaurant is really more comfortable than the palace. I will find more opportunities to come to Qingzhou to enjoy it in the future. Feng Deshu watched the tap flow for a while, and then closed the tap again. Then he turned on the faucet on the bathtub, and a stream of hot water spewed out immediately. Seeing this, Feng Deshu became more and more excited. He looked through the window to a water tower adjacent to the cold water tower. There was a large iron stove above the water tower. 2 people were burning fire below, and the hot water was flowing from the iron stove. It's time to take a hot bath. Feng Deshu's eyes narrowed with enjoyment on his face at this time. Xiaoming in Prince Qi's mansion was also taking a hot bath during his absence. The works in the palace did not stop today. There are also 2 water towers in the palace, one of which is a cold water tower and the other is a hot water tower. These 2 water towers provide the palace with daily water. Among them, the hot water tower is a standing boiler. The boiler is divided into 2 layers. The upper layer is a container for storing water, and the lower layer is for burning coal, which is basically the same as the hot water boiler in a modern bathhouse. In the steaming bathroom, Aster and Luluo gently rubbed Xiaoming's back around the towel. The faces of the 2 people, who were steaming with heat, were flushed, very attractive. While rubbing her back for Xiaoming, Zuan said, "Your Highness, Shi Langfeng is here. I guess we will go to Chang'an soon." "No, this time, Your Royal Highness is going to get married in Chang'an. This Fei Yue is really lucky. This time Your Highness conquered Shanhaiguan." Xiaoming lay lazily in the bathtub. This time of day was the most relaxing time of his day. At this time, Luluo was rubbing his arms for him, while Aster was standing behind him and pinching his shoulders, his body swaying back and forth slightly, a soft mass constantly touching his head. At this moment, he finally understands why our rights are so obsessed. As long as you stand on a high place, everything in this world will turn on your palm. Wake up and take control of the world, and lie drunk on the knees of beautiful women. While the 2 were gossiping, Xiaoming turned his hands and pulled Luluo, who was rubbing his back, into the bathtub with an exclamation. The towel on Luluo's body slipped inch by inch. A little white sheep was lying in his arms. He used his fingers to lift Luluo's chin, and deliberately said, bold, even arrogantly talking about a princess, "Be careful that this king treats you." Crime. Luluo's face was as red as an apple, and when her skin touched, a strange feeling made her heart skip a beat. Even though Xiaoming was holding her chin, she still did not dare to look directly into Xiaoming's eyes. Xiaoming laughed when he saw this, and he lived his life as he wanted to. Seeing Luluo so shy, he would naturally not be honest. Aster is much more generous than Luluo, he said coquettishly. This servant is willing to be punished. While smiling, Zuan turned to Xiaoming, took the initiative to undo the towel on her body, and said in a charming manner, "His Royal Highness's wedding is imminent. The Empress said that it is time to let His Highness understand the room matter, and let the servant serve His Highness tonight." Bar Luluo is also aware of this matter. In the Great Yu Kingdom, men and women are very defensive, so women will have family members to teach them before the big wedding, so that they can know the affairs of men and women, and this man is the same. This is a process. Obviously, concubine Zhen still regards Xiaoming as a good baby, but her predecessor Xiaoming has long since fallen. And it is precisely because of this process that Xiaoming asked concubine Zhen for Aster and green radish. At that time, although Xiaoming was a little surprised that Aster would say these words, he had to say that every man could not refuse looking at the 2 ketone bodies like mutton fat. Jade. Xiaoming smiled slightly. He kept emphasizing that he was not the modern Xiaoming, but Xiaoming, the 7th prince of the Great Yu Kingdom. At this time, the heating reverberated in the room, and what was even warmer was the heart of dry wood and fire. The waiter helped Jiao and the weak, and it was the time when the new grace was granted. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 378. Xiaoming woke up when the first rays of sunlight came into the bedroom through the gap in the window in the morning. Instinctively, he groped under the quilt behind him and found that someone had walked away and was cold lying in the bed and reminiscing about the spring last night. He couldn't help but bring a smile to the corner of his mouth. After so many days, this is the real life. But what surprised him was that these 2 girls knew a lot. It seemed that the 2 really received training in this area in the palace. Now he finally understands why Xiao Wangsun is so afraid of losing his throne, the world's first-class glory and wealth. Gentle Daughter Town is not the palace compound. Just as he was thinking, the door of the bedroom was pushed open, and Luluo walked in with a salty gargle in his mouth. "His Royal Highness, you are awake." Pang Changshi has been waiting outside for a while, saying that all the generals from Shanhaiguan have returned. When will this reward conference start? Luo looked at Xiao Ming's eyes without the previous blue. Astringent, but with a family-like intimacy they gave Xiao Ming their whole heart last night, and their psychology naturally changed. From a young girl to a woman overnight, this change was keenly observed by Xiao Ming. He said to Luo, "It's enough for other maids to do such a thing. Now you have to watch the textile mill and serve this king." "It's too hard," Luo said with a smile. "Those girls are clumsy. Slaves are afraid that they will not be able to serve your highness." With that said, Luo brought the tea to Xiao Ming. Xiao Ming laughed twice, and pinched one around Luo's waist. Luo gave Xiao Ming a white look and said, "Your highness, Peng Changshi has been waiting for a long time, and it will be a long time in the future." After drinking a sip of tea, Xiao Ming looked at Luo and was a little surprised. If this girl had blushed and twisted and turned, now she is so calm, like a wife serving her husband. Shaking his head with a wry smile, Xiao Ming went to see Peng Yukin after washing up. Now he pays more attention to government affairs. After all, he needs to work harder to protect him now. Although the barbarians were blocked from Shanhaiguan, they must be looking for an opportunity to re-enter the Central Plains like a hungry wolf. He did not forget the powerful combat power of the barbarians in Jizhao. If the barbarian seized the opportunity to invade the Great Yu Kingdom with the strength of the whole country, the Great Yu Kingdom would not last long. Therefore, he has not been arrogant enough to think that he is invincible in the world. Before he has reached the military level of the First World War, the nomads have always been the great enemies of the farming nation. What's more, the current Western powers still surpass him in terms of technology, and he still has a long way to go. In the main hall, Peng Yukin had been waiting for a long time. Xiao Ming went to the main hall to inquire about the situation and went to the governor's mansion with him after the reward. He was about to go to Chang'an when he arrived at the governor mansion. Xiao Ming sent someone to the King's Hao camp, and then notified the students of Bowen College to come, and at the same time asked Li Keitong to call the businessmen who contributed a lot to the northern expedition in the past few days. He and Peng Yukin have negotiated properly, and he already has the specific reward quota. After a morning of preparations, Xiao Ming and Peng Yukin held a rewarding conference at the governor's mansion in the afternoon. "Everyone, I asked you to come this time. I guess you also know the purpose of this meeting in your heart," Xiao Ming said while looking at everyone. "Some of the people sitting in the governor's mansion are from the army, some from the Chamber of Commerce, and some from Bowen College." When everyone heard the words, they looked expectant, and all looked at Xiao Ming. After a pause, Xiao Ming said, "If it wasn't for your great help in the Battle of Jizhao, there is no need to talk about the danger of Jizhao now, and it is even more impossible for this Shanhaiguan to be in the hands of this king now. So, in order to reward you, this time this king will honor promise. I will reward you with the title of honor." Although it was clear in his heart, what Xiao Ming said directly was a shock to everyone, especially Lin Wentao and the others. After saying this, Xiao Ming handed over the right to speak to Peng Yukin. At this time, Peng Yukin stood up and said, "The first is the award of the title, and then it will be the adjustment of King Zhao's government affairs." After coughing, Peng Yukin looked at Lin Wentao, Liang Yubin, and He Chang, and he read, "Lin Wentao led the School of Physics to conduct bold research and created a hot air balloon. He has made outstanding contributions in this war, and is hereby granted the county viscount with 1,000 taels of silver, Yuangi Ishan 200 acres. Liang Yubin, He Chang bravely manipulated hot air balloons in the war, provided information for the army, detected the enemy's situation, specially granted the county baron, rewarded 500 taels of silver, and Yanggi Ishan 100 acres." "Thank you, your highness." After Peng Yukin finished reading, Lin Wentao stood up abruptly. His whole body was trembling with excitement. Once upon a time, he was just a down-and-out scholar who might make a living by selling characters all his life. Now he has a title recognized by the government overnight and has won 200 acres of Yanggai field. This is a great gift for him, and it is a matter of glory. Liang Yubin and He Chang were equally excited, but He Chang cried directly, which shows the mood at this time. After all, such things as nobility are generally not related to commoners, but now they have obtained something that can only be dreamed of in a dream. This time Xiao Ming first awarded the Bowen Institute to emphasize that technology is the primary productive force. The meeting was recorded by reporters on the spot. After it was published in the newspaper, everyone would understand the importance he attached to the Bowen Institute. The reward to Lin Wentao ended, and then Peng Yukin began to reward Lu Tong, Chen Qi, Zhang Liu, and Song Changping. They are also technical backbones. Among them, Lu Tong and Chen Qi got the title of County Count, Song Changping and Zhang Liu got the title. It's a county title after all. Lu Tong and Chen Qi made the most contributions to King Zhao. From the eyes of everyone, he saw that they had no problem with this award. After the Bowen Academy, the award was given to the generals of the army. Pang Yuken turned the conversation to Xiao Ming. He is a man who knows his senses very well, and he has nothing to do with military affairs. Xiao Ming picked up the reward book and looked at Niu Ben, and said, Captain Niu Ben led the King Zhao army to defeat the barbarians and made great contributions, and he was awarded the title of County Earl, rewarded 10,000 taels of silver, and 2,000 acres of Yonggai field. Lu Fei fought bravely, granted the title of County Earl, 2,000 taels of silver, 600 acres of Yonggai field. Luo Xin, County Earl, Kiguangai County Viscount, Zhu Sansi County Baron. After thinking about it one by one, the generals who participated in this war basically got titles of various sizes, and this also proves that Xiao Ming attaches great importance to the army, and eliminates the pedantic thinking of the Great Yu Kingdom of emphasizing literature over martial arts. Thank you, Your Highness, Long En, we will do our best for His Highness and I. After Xiao Ming read the award, Niu Ben stood up with a group of generals and gave a military salute to Xiao Ming. My honor is loyalty. The last group of generals shouted loudly. Chapter 379. In the governor mansion, the atmosphere became more and more enthusiastic. Everyone's face was filled with smiles, and those who won the title exchanged glances with each other. All of them were delighted, and those who received the title were full of expectations. Xiao Ming's eyes swept across everyone's faces to him. This title is just a title, but it is of great significance to these generals who came from commoners. After all, the title symbolizes honor, while silver and Yonggi Yishan symbolize wealth. The wealth he bestowed on these generals was enough to keep them safe and secure, making it more difficult for them to be bought off by the enemy. For him, it would not lose much at all. Now the 6 states have less people and more land, and these cultivated lands are given to them, which can also promote agricultural production. After rewarding the general, Xiao Ming turned to Pang Yuken and said, Pang Changshi, you have been with this king for the longest time, and you are Xiao He of this king. You take care of all the logistics and government affairs yourself. Title Your Highness, this. Pang Yuken was taken aback. He never included himself when discussing the title of reward. He didn't think that Xiao Ming was thinking about him, and he was a little overwhelmed for a while, to be honest. He is very envious of Niu Ben and others to be knighted, but from the overall situation, he is not jealous now. Xiao Ming suddenly said this, which made him feel complicated for a while. You don't have to refuse. This is what this king owes you, and your contribution to King Zhao is no less than that of the generals. Hearing this, Niu Ben and other generals nodded their heads. They still respect Pang Yuken very much from the bottom of their hearts, and Pang Yuken is a clean person, so getting a reward at this time can improve his life. Thank you, Your Highness. Pang Yuken choked, recalling the days after coming to King Zhao. He was deeply touched for a while, and he believed that a bright future of King Zhao was waiting for them. Patting Pang Yuken on the shoulder, Xiao Ming looked at Zhan Xingcheng and said, Zhan Xingcheng, you don't think the title of county count is low, right? His Royal Highness, Colonel Lu Fei is just a county magistrate. I am grateful for this title. Zhan Xingcheng smiled. He knew that his qualifications were still low, and if the title was too high, it would definitely cause dissatisfaction from others. And Niu Ben and Pang Yuken are the right-hand men of King Qi, which is recognized, and there is nothing to be jealous of. Xiao Ming nodded when he heard the words, and then he rewarded Chen Wen along with some officials. In the end, he looked at Li Keihun and the 2 businessmen this time. He also included the merchants in the list of awards, for no other reason but to attract rich merchants from the Great Yu Kingdom to settle in King Zhao and transfer their industries to King Zhao. Although Xiao Ming has his own industrial system, Dayu also has traditional handicraft industries, such as textiles, cloth dyeing, paper making, food oil and other industries. He doesn't need to create these ready-made industries. He just needs to attract businessmen to relocate their industries in other places to King Zhao. As for the technological improvement of the industry, it is another matter. Li Keihun, County Earl, Xiao Ming said with a smile. Li Keihun had been restless when he awarded the reward just now. After all, the merchant suffered from long-term discrimination and had low self-esteem. Li Keihun was a little worried that he would not be able to get the title. When Xiao Ming said this title, Li Keihun relaxed. He stood up, his lips quivered, and he looked like he was about to cry. Thank you, Your Highness, for the kindness. The lower official is unforgettable. Xiao Ming laughed. When he let Li Keihun take over the Chamber of Commerce, he had promised to treat him equally, which was also a reward in the end. He turned his attention to the 2 most special people at the meeting, Ding Wu and Dai Zixing. Calling these two to him was a matter of careful consideration. Both of them were businessmen from other places, and they both joined the King's household registration later, and they received a lot of money to support the northern expedition, especially Ding Wu. Li San has already investigated him, and as Ding Wanquan's son now he has named the two of them, which will greatly stimulate the enthusiasm of the merchants. Ding Wu, County Baron, Dai Zixing. County Baron Xiaoming looked at the two and said slowly. Ding Wu and Dai Zixing felt uncomfortable from the moment they entered the Dudo's mansion. In front of them were all the officials and generals under King Qi's command, all of whom had high status. They are nothing in front of these people, but even though they were a little nervous, they were equally anxious in their hearts, and they also had hope for the title. Thank you, Your Highness, Long En. Ding Wu and Dai Zixing looked at each other and stood up. I will do my best to be loyal to Your Highness and make greater contributions to King Zhao. Xiaoming nodded and let the two sit down. The two of you are chosen by the merchants because it is in this king's view that you are the role models of the merchants. In the future, the two King Zhao merchants will have to contribute more. Ding Wu and Dai Zixing nodded at the same time, their faces flushed with excitement. He glanced at the reward booklet again, and now that the title is over, Xiaoming asked the students and merchants to leave first. The next thing he wants to talk about is government affairs. Now that the reward is over, let's talk about the fief. Feng Shilin has already arrived in King Zhao. In a few days, the king will go to Chang'an. During this period, you must keep an eye on the fief for the king. Pang Yukin nodded and said, His Royal Highness is going to Chang'an. The big marriage is the real business. If His Highness can give birth to an heir as soon as possible, the 6 states will be more stable. Hearing that, Xiaoming rolled his eyes. Pang Yukin's mind was full of the court stuff. The princess didn't discuss the heir before, which was the same as the minister wanted the emperor to give birth to a son. If he suddenly hangs up that day, these guys won't become headless birds. Although he was very helpless and wanted to beat Pang Yukin, Xiaoming knew that this was the helplessness of the feudal dynasty. After all, these people were following him with their lives, but he didn't take Pang Yukin's way, but said, Pang Changshi, this king is going to Chang'an. You have to deal with this Yao Zhao and the disaster victims properly, and cooperate with the army recruitment. There are still some inconsistencies among these disaster victims. Young and strong people who are willing to farm, joining the army as their ideal. Yes, Your Highness. Pang Yukin nodded and Xiaoming said, I'm still waiting for this king to return and the potatoes will be harvested. During this time, you have to keep an eye on the slave plantation. Pang Yukin nodded again. Xiaoming looked at Niu Ben again and said, Captain Niu, you have to take care of the formation of the Yao Zhao army. Now that Yao Zhao is in our hands, the number of our army should also be expanded. After all, the current army is already stretched. The military expansion has to start now. Yes. Niu Ben nodded, then Xiaoming said, also, muskets have been installed in the army. From now on, you should focus on building a firearms army. Chapter 380 Slave Trade. P.S. There is one more chapter later. After a series of orders were issued, Xiaoming explained all the affairs of the fief to avoid any trouble. He also asked Pang Yukin to write down all his words, and he would punish anyone who did not complete the task at that time. In the end he said, don't think that you can rest easy when you get the title. If you don't want to make progress from now on and waste this title given to you by this king can still take them back. As soon as these words were said, the expressions of the officials and generals suddenly became solemn, and they did not want to lose this honor. He secretly vowed to work harder in the future. The meeting continued until the evening, and Xiaoming breathed a sigh of relief at this time. The work was finally completed, and he could go to Chang'an in peace. Of course, there are still some people who didn't read the Dao at this meeting. It's not that they don't have titles, but that these people are not in King Zhao now. For example, Liang Dahe, a slave trader, Jin Defu, a mine owner, and Yu Yun, who is now in the shipyard in Dengzhou. While he was watching the construction of the Galen ship, he was also recruiting cadets in Dengzhou to increase the number of naval personnel. After the meeting, Xiaoming went straight back to the palace, and he felt relieved after the government affairs explained. After Xiaoming left, Pang Yukin, Niu Ben and others also went outside the governor's mansion. At this time, everyone immediately reveled in their own titles and honors. Lu Fei was the first to say proudly, oh, 2,000 taels of silver, 600 acres of Yanggai field. What should I do? Hearing this, Luo Xin said disdainfully, what should I do? It's not easy to do, just buy a few slaves to farm. My family's Yanggai field is much bigger than this. Your father belongs to General Luo. What does it have to do with you? You are just like me. Lu Fei looked unhappy. Niu Ben said with emotion, hey, I don't know how to use the 10,000 taels of silver. "Your Highness is too generous." Lu Fei was immediately compared, and he said with a hilarious smile, "Captain, if you don't know how to spend, I can help you spend it. I am familiar with Liang Dahe. When he comes back, he will buy you some slaves with money and help you. If you see a slave plantation, you will not have to worry about eating and drinking in the future." The people who got the reward now are all thinking of Lu Fei. At this time they already had land in their homes, but now that they had so much land, and they had money in their hands, they all wanted to buy slaves to cultivate the Yonggai field. Pang Yukin shook his head when he heard the words, but there was no way. He is also facing this problem now. He said, "Isn't it the only one who will follow His Highness to rise to the top in the future? Since His Highness has already rewarded us, we don't need to hide it. I think Lu Fei is right. Buy a few slaves and come back. Farming is good, and people take food as their heaven. It's just that all the slaves Liang Dahe bought are from His Royal Highness. Where do we go to buy slaves?" Li Keitong knew the business Liang Dahe was doing very well, so he poured a basin of cold water on everyone. Lu Fei said, "Isn't there anyone who sells slaves except Liang Dahe?" "Yes, but very few." Pang Yukin frowned. Now that King Zhao lacks population, His Highness is worried about this matter, and naturally he will not be willing to give us his slaves. "But Li Keitong, your businessmen did not carry out slavery." A traitor, Li Keitong recalled for a while and said, "This is true, but their scale is very small, and they are there today, but not tomorrow. The most important thing is that our Highness has not agreed to these merchants to sell slaves." "You murderer, His Highness didn't ask that. You forgot." "You wouldn't ask? I'll leave this to you. If I can't buy slaves, I'll find you, Li Keitong," Lu Fei said with a face. Rogue look. He was used to fighting with Li Keitong. "Xiao Yilu, you are too shameless." After saying this, Li Keitong suddenly found that everyone was looking at him eagerly. After pondering for a while, he said depressedly, Okay, I'll go and ask His Highness to see if I can allow other merchants to sell slaves in King Zhao." After all, Li Keitong went to Qi Wangfu. When Pang Yukin and the others saw it, they immediately laughed, and he said to Niu Ben, "In my opinion, your Highness values this slave plantation very much, and this potato and pepper will have great prospects in the future. If you listen to me, it is better to plant it. These things may be more profitable than growing food in the future." Niu Ben looked like he didn't care. He had seen through the ups and downs of his life, and he just wanted to keep his fame in his later years. He said, "We will plant what Pang Changshi has planted, and we still believe in Pang Changshi's vision." Of everyone nodded when they heard the words. After all, Xiao Ming and Pang Yukin have been away recently, and Pang Yukin knows Xiao Ming's thoughts very well. After chatting for a while in the governor mansion, everyone went home, and they couldn't wait to tell their families the good news. At this time, Li Keitong had already arrived at the Prince Qi's mansion, but he still walked in. "Li Keitong, what's the matter? Are you dissatisfied with this king's reward to you?" Xiao Ming was a little surprised when he learned that Li Keitong came His Royal Highness. "This is not the case. How dare you question your Highness's reward?" Speaking of which, the lower officials were forced by Pang Changshi and others. They insisted that the lower officials come to ask whether His Highness could open the private slave trade, so then they can buy slaves and go back to farming folk slave trade. Xiao Ming suddenly woke up. Since he let Liang Dahe sell slaves, almost all the slave trade in King Zhao has been monopolized, but now this situation obviously needs to be changed. After all, in addition to King Zhao, he also has vast land in Yaoxiao. Now these lands require a lot of labor, and obviously cannot be swallowed by their own abilities, so they can only mobilize more people to buy land and build plantations, which can accelerate King Zhao's economic development. After all, many people are powerful, and he needs to be a leader, not a person who stifles the overall development for his own interests. So he said, "They're right, so let's take this opportunity to open up the slave trade, encourage the merchants in the Chamber of Commerce to engage in slave trade, and allow them to open a slave trade market in King Zhao." "Yes, Your Highness." Li Keitong was very excited. Xiao Ming nodded. Now that the vigorous slave trade in the West is already underway, he cannot be left behind. Perhaps from the modern point of view, this trade has no human rights, but the fact is that he is in an era of no human rights, so there is no need to talk about human rights. Be the Virgin Mary. After all, the issue of national luck and wealth accumulation is somewhat trivial. Chapter 381. Feng Deshu was looking at Prince Qi's mansion, and he was somewhat envious of the two tall water towers in the mansion. He instantly understood that it was the same as the water tower in front of the Wei family restaurant. Today is the day when King Qi went to Chang'an, And he specially waited in the palace of King Qi to set off with King Qi. He was a little reluctant to live in the Wei family restaurant for 2 days, but he couldn't delay his time in Beijing, so King Qi also hurriedly ended the award ceremony. He also learned a little about this award ceremony from the newspaper the next day. From this, he also learned more about King Qi's maverick. He understood the officials and generals, but he really couldn't understand Xiao Ming's treatment of commoners and generals. Merchants are also awarded titles. Your Highness, this time you go to Chang'an, and you'll have to spend money again. When Feng Deshu saw the carriages one after another in front of the palace gate, the spy's voice suddenly became an octave higher. After the award ceremony, Xiao Ming was preparing to go to Chang'an. These 2 days were spent preparing supplies for the trip. Feng Shilin is joking, these are just small gifts. Before Xiao Ming could get to Feng Deshu, he smelled a strong perfume coupled with the feminine qualities of Feng Deshu. There is a strange image of don't give 100 yuan. Feng Deshu laughed lightly, and then he looked at Luo and Aster who were following Xiao Ming, and immediately raised his hand and patted Xiao Ming lightly. Your Highness, these 2 days have been quite a blessing. While talking about Feng Deshu, he looked at Aster and Luo. Seeing Feng Deshu like this, Zuan and Luo suddenly felt unnatural. Xiao Ming immediately understood what Feng Deshu meant. He was a little helpless. This old eunuch deserved to be in the palace for a long time. He smiled sassily, but Xiao Ming didn't care. After all, Feng Deshu is a eunuch, and he said, thanks to Feng Shilin's good words, Feng Shilin will wait a while. When the guards arrive, this king will set off. As soon as he finished speaking, there was a sound of hooves in front of the door, and Luo Xin and Qi Guanggai walked in. His Royal Highness, everyone has arrived, we can leave. Luo Xin said loudly. Xiao Ming nodded. This time he didn't take Lu Fei with him. Apart from Niu Ben, Lu Fei and Luo Xin were his two most capable subordinates. Now Niu Ben is going to stay in Qingzhou to be responsible for the expansion of the army. Luo Xin is going to Chang'an, and Lu Fei can only go to guard Shanhaiguan. After all, the importance of Shanhaiguan need not be understated. Compared with Luo Xin, he has more confidence in Lu Fei guarding Shanhaiguan. In addition to Luo Xin, Niu Ben also sent Qi Guanggai to him. Qi Guanggai was proficient in cavalry. This time Xiao Ming went to Chang'an with 5,000 cuirassiers. With these 5,000 cuirassiers, they would not be afraid even in an encounter. This was for the sake of Xiao Ming's safety. The cavalry came and went like the wind, making it ideal for long journeys. Seeing this, Xiao Ming nodded and asked Luo Xin and Qi Guanggai to wait for a while. He was still waiting for the military workshop to deliver something. Not long after, Chen Qi came over with a craftsman carrying several large boxes, and he was holding a small box in his arms. Your Highness, things have arrived. Chen Qi winked at Xiao Ming as he spoke, indicating the small box in his arms because he saw Feng Deshu, who was looking around. Xiao Ming nodded knowingly and asked him to go back. Then he said to Feng Deshu, Feng Shilin, we should also set off. Hearing this, Feng Deshu glanced in the direction of the Wei family restaurant with some reluctance, and then went out of the palace and sat in a prepared sedan chair. In the center of the team is a large sedan chair, which is twice as big as Feng Deshu's sedan chair, and it can hold 3 people in it. Xiao Ming led Aster and Luo onto the sedan chair. At this time everything was ready. At this time, Luo Xin and Qi Guanggai got on the horse and stood on both sides of the sedan chair. When Xiao Ming ordered to set off, the whole team walked forward outside Qingzhou City. Pang Yuqin led a group of officials to see Xiao Ming off, and before leaving, he explained a few words to him, and Xiao Ming set off for Chang'an. This time, Xiao Ming prepared such a big sedan chair not for himself, but for a Fei Yu'er. After all, after the marriage in Chang'an, Fei Yu'er would go back to Qingzhou with him sitting in the sedan chair covered with fur carpet. Xiao Ming placed a box Chen Qi gave him on the table in the middle. At this time, Aster asked, Your Highness, what is this? Musket. Xiao Ming smiled. Then he opened the box and found 2 well-made short-barreled muskets inside. The musket stock was made of mahogany with patterns carved on it. The length of the musket was only 30 centimeters, but the barrel was relatively thick. This was for the sake of power. Such a musket is enough for Xiao Ming to hide under his clothes and carry it everywhere. With a musket for self-defense, Xiao Ming has the power to protect himself when suddenly facing an assassin. No matter how capable you are, this musket can be shot in one shot. Is this a weapon used by the Qingzhou military? Luo asked in surprise. Xiao Ming nodded. This is so powerful that it can kill a tiger. Luo was timid, and when she said this, her face turned pale with fright. Aster looked at the other musket with interest, and then pointed the barrel of the gun at herself. Xiao Ming was startled and grabbed it immediately, angrily said, You are dying. This musket. It's loaded with bullets and ammo. Just now, Xiao Ming was really scared into a cold sweat. If this happened, Aster's life would be lost. After being reprimanded by Xiao Ming, Zhuan pouted her lips and said coquettishly, "It will take another 10 days to go to Chang'an." "It's really boring." Xiao Ming put away the musket and said with a smile, "How can it be boring? Such a big sedan chair is enough for us to play." Aster didn't understand at first, but when she realized Xiao Ming's words carefully, she suddenly blushed. In the play of Aster and Luo, 10 days later, the team successfully arrived in Chang'an. At this time, both Xiao Ming and Luo Xin breathed a sigh of relief. This was finally safe. Before the team arrived, the postmaster had already passed the news to Chang'an in advance, so when they arrived in Chang'an, Xiao Wangsun had already sent officials to wait at the city gate to know about Xiao Ming and his party. "His Royal Highness, this time your Majesty personally sent people from the Ministry of Rites to greet you. Which shows that your Majesty attaches great importance to His Highness." Feng De submerged the smile on the carriage's face. When they came to Chang'an last time, they were made difficult by the city gate guards. And now Xiao Wangsun is more meticulous. Nodding his head, he said to Feng Deshu, "Feng Shilin, please, this time back to Chang'an. I hope Feng Shilin can take care of him more." "What did His Highness say?" "This old servant still wants to go to King Zhao more in the future. This time back to Chang'an, this old servant will definitely be the front and back of His Highness." Chapter 382. The bustling avenue is full of people and traffic. Compared with last year, the prosperity of Chang'an City is still the same, just like a peaceful and prosperous age, and the war far away in Jizhao did not affect here. Outside the city gate, Li Zhang, the servant of the Ministry of Rites, was in charge of welcoming Xiao Ming and his party. "His Royal Highness, the Emperor ordered the officials to wait here for a long time. Please accompany the officials into the palace." Xiao Ming nodded lightly. His eyes crossed Li Zhang's for a moment, and he saw a trace of unnaturalness in Li Zhang's eyes. "The secret guard has now compiled a list of the various forces in the Great Yu Kingdom." This Li Zhang was compiled in the line of the King of Chu, in addition to the German concubine, the third Prince Xiao Zhen. When he came to Chang'an this time, Xiao Ming took 12 points of caution. It was precisely because of this that he asked the military workshop to specially build a pair of short-barreled muskets for his self-defense, and Li San also sneaked into Chang'an in advance to collect information for him, to prevent him from becoming blind in Chang'an like last time. After entering Chang'an City, Luo Hong appeared in front of him, and he arranged the soldiers brought by Luo Xin and Qi Guanggai to Jin Wuwei's camp for repair. The place where he lives has not changed, but the difference is that the plaque in front of the door has been replaced with a plaque of Prince Qi's mansion. "His Royal Highness, the Emperor said that this will be His Highness's residence in Chang'an from now on." Feng Deshu said with a smile. "Father is really caring." Xiao Ming smiled. The princes of the excluded vassals could not have their own palaces in Chang'an City. Now Xiao Wangsun gave him a palace by exception, which shows Xiao Wangsun's attitude towards him. Now Li Zhang also smiled, but this smile was really fake. If we say that the Battle of Kangzhou Xiao Ming only changed Xiao Wangsun's opinion of him, now that the danger of Jizhao has been lifted and Shanhaiguan has been conquered, Xiao Ming's prestige can now be vaguely comparable to that of the prince who has the support of the vassal king behind him, because Xiao Ming has changed from an unremarkable vassal king to a person as important as other princes. Instructed Aster and Luluo to bring their servants to settle in the palace, and he followed Li Zhang to the palace in the Bishu Pavilion. He met Xiao Wangsun and Empress Zhao. "My son, see the father." The Queen. Xiao Ming was a little surprised when Li Zhang led Xiao Ming to the Bishu Pavilion, because generally speaking, Xiao Wangsun would only summon princes and ministers in the study. However, when he saw his mother-in-law and Empress Zhao sitting side by side on Xiao Wangsun's sides, while the other concubines were only sitting at the bottom, he became connected. His cheat father is very shrewd. He must understand that no matter what kind of reward is now, it is not as effective as bringing the father-son relationship closer to Xiao Ming. "Minger, you don't need to be polite. You must be tired from the long journey. Come here, sit down and rest." Xiao Wangsun showed a fatherly smile, without the air of an emperor, but like an ordinary father. Empress Zhao was the same, beckoned to him and said, "Minger, don't stand, this is the harem, there are not so many rules, just treat it as a family gathering." If the predecessor was Xiao Ming, he would definitely be very moved at this time. After all, he had not been treated so favorably since he was a child, and Xiao Wangsun would not have spoken to him so intimately. Many thanks to the father, the queen. When Xiao Ming spoke, he glanced at concubine Zhen, who was looking at him lovingly, her eyes full of pride. Now she is a mother and a child. In the past, she always had to be patient everywhere in the palace, but now, every concubine in the palace did not dare to provoke him, Even the queen treated him politely, like a sister. After thanking him, Xiao Ming sat down under concubine Zhen Xiao Wengsu and said with a slight smile, "Ming'er, it's rare for you to return to Chang'an once, and this time you are getting married again, but it is a double happiness. Tonight, the royal father specially set up a banquet in the palace's Fulan Hall. When the time comes, the princesses, the prince will be there, as well your third and fourth uncles. Taking this opportunity, our royal family can gather together, so as not to become unfamiliar. After all, in the great Yu Kingdom, only our royal clansmen are of one mind. Yes, father and son, I miss Chang'an's relatives very much." Xiao Ming followed Xiao Wengsun's words, and now he's basically sure that Xiao Wengsun is playing the emotional card. But on the other hand, when an emperor plays the emotional card, it also means that he values the person throughout the ages. It must have been Xiao Ming's remarks made Xiao Wengsun show a comfortable smile. He knew that he was very strict with Xiao Ming before, although it was for his own good, but Xiao Ming did not necessarily think so. Therefore, he thought of taking the opportunity to re-establish the father-son, monarch-subject relationship between the two. Well, since this is the case, the father will not talk more. "Today, we will not talk about state affairs, only family affairs. You and your mother and concubine will talk for a while, and the father will talk to you at the banquet in the evening." Xiao Wengsun stood up at this time. His purpose has been achieved. He summoned Xiao Ming at the Bishu Pavilion, and arranging the position of concubine Zhen in this way was to tell Xiao Ming his current attitude. Xiao Wengsun left together, and the other concubines also got up and left. At this time, Zhenfei and Xiao Ming sent Xiao Wengsun and others out of the Bishu Pavilion together, and then turned back. This battle is really not small. Xiao Ming breathed a sigh of relief. He was accustomed to being free in King's Hao, and when he arrived in the palace, it was a matter of etiquette. Concubine Zhen sighed, pulled Xiao Ming to sit down on the chair, and said, "I'm not showing you such a big battle. You have so much credit, can your father ignore you? In the past, there were only different surnames. When the king enters the capital, your father will bring them to meet the corresponding princes and concubines." After a pause, concubine Zhen looked at Xiao Ming and said, "However, concubine Mu is now a mother and a child. Ming'er, you are really promising now. The mother-in-law has passed the prize. This time, it's just that the son took advantage of Jin Wu Wei, otherwise this barbarian will not be easy to fight." Xiao Ming told the truth. Concubine Zhen nodded. She didn't pay much attention to these national affairs, but said, "I finally come back once. Don't talk about these fighting and killing things, but talk about you and Fei Yuer's wedding." She pursed her lips and smiled, and concubine Zhen suddenly said, "Have you received Aster and Luo?" Xiao Ming was stunned when he heard the words, and he said helplessly, "Mother concubine, isn't this your will?" Concubine Zhen smiled and nodded. "This is also to let you know some personal affairs in advance, but you have to distinguish the priority. Luo and Ziwen are only maids, and they will only be maids, and Fei Yu is the only princess. Now you are no longer King Qi from 6 years ago. The princes of Chang'an City are all staring at you. They want to kill you and marry the Fei family. It means that you have a mouth to speak for you in this court. This is why there will be this marriage, although the mother-in-law knows that you are not willing to participate in these messes, but now this situation cannot help you." Concubine Zhen has always been smart, and she can see the problem very accurately at this time. What she said was exactly what Xiao Ming was thinking about, so he said, "Mother concubine, my son remembers it." Chapter 383 Family Banquet. A red sun gradually disappeared on the horizon, and the lanterns on both sides of the road in the palace were lit one by the small yellow gates at the beginning of the lanterns. The palace looked beautiful under the light of the lanterns, and the beauty of the ancient style made Xiao Ming's mood a little quieter. After talking with concubine Zhen in Bishu Pavilion, Feng Deshu came towards the two to go to Fulan Hall. At this time, the prince, concubines and princesses have all arrived in the Fulan Hall, and the royal banquet is about to begin. As concubine Zhen went to the Fulan Palace, the court ladies who just happened to pass along the way cast charming glances at Xiao Ming from time to time. Concubine Zhen smiled without saying a word. She naturally understood what was going on in the deep palace. Now that Xiao Ming is in full swing, these palace maids are looking forward to being seen by Xiao Ming in this way. They can have a worry-free second half of their lives. After all, there are still palace maids in the palace who were spotted by the prince, so they flew up the branches and turned into phoenixes. However, this also shows the change in Xiao Ming's status now. He didn't have this treatment before the two soon arrived at the Fulan Hall. Just as Feng Deshu said, the prince, princess, and concubines in the Fulan Hall at this time all arrived seeing Xiao Ming's arrival. Some princes and princesses younger than Xiao Ming all stood up and saluted him. The current Xiao Ming is no longer the Xiao Ming of the past. Although these princes and princesses are young, their mothers and concubines are very shrewd. Before the family banquet started, they had already explained how to treat Xiao Ming. Occasions with many people and lively people always make people feel good, and Xiao Ming also greeted them one by one. At this moment, a pretty figure came to Xiao Ming and stretched out a small white hand. Did Brother Qi bring me a gift? I'm running out of perfume. Princess Xiang Cheng pouted, pestering Xiao Ming for a gift. As soon as she opened her mouth, the other little princes and princesses followed suit, and they ran over and extended their hands to Xiao Ming, all of them staring blankly. Many concubines smiled upon seeing this. At this moment, Xiao Ming's mood suddenly turned cloudy. At least some younger siblings in the palace had no ill will towards him. Li San's list is not all enemies. For example, this Princess Xiang Cheng, her mother and concubine died young, and after Xiao Ming went to King Zhao, concubine Zhen felt that there was nothing to rely on, so she took Princess Xiang Cheng under her knees. She usually raised her own daughter, and Princess Xiang Cheng was only 7 years old at that time. Now that 6 or 7 years have passed, Princess Xiang Cheng has turned into a little beauty and was adopted by concubine Zhen. Princess Xiang Cheng has always regarded Xiao Ming as her elder brother. Therefore, Princess Xiang Cheng was so intimate with Xiao Ming. The gifts are all outside the palace, and you are indispensable. Xiao Ming rolled his eyes. He, seventh brother, is the best to me. Princess Xiang Cheng had 2 dimples on her face, and returned to her seat with a smile. It is actually very pitiful for a princess who has no background. In a place like the palace, having no background means that it can be manipulated by others. Those princesses who are sent to barbarians and relatives are all because they do not have rich family backgrounds. Princess Xiang Cheng had just left when a 14-year-old boy stood beside Xiao Ming. Seventh brother, can I go and fight the barbarians with you? Are you Ziyan? Looking carefully at this young man, Xiao Ming tried his best to recall that this seemed to be the 9th prince. Rare, I thought you didn't remember me, brother 7. Xiao Ziyan said with a smile. Xiao Ming smiled helplessly. This Xiao Ziyan has nothing to do with him now, but will soon have a deeper relationship because Xiao Ziyan wanted to call Fei Yue her cousin. There was no other reason. His mother was Fiji's younger sister, the imperial concubine Guang. Patting Xiao Ziyan's shoulder, Xiao Ming laughed. It seemed that he was not alone in Chang'an, and he finally understood concubine Zhen's good intentions. He said to Xiao Ziyan, okay, as long as the royal father agrees, the 7th brother will take you to see what the battlefield is. Xiao Ziyan turned to Xiao Wangsun, who was sitting in the main seat, in surprise and said, Father, the 7th brother said that he is willing to take me to fight the barbarians. Since Xiao Ming entered the Fulan Hall, Xiao Wangsun's eyes were focused on Xiao Ming. Seeing Xiao Ming's expression gradually eased, he understood that he had taken the right step in the past. Xiao Ming was always alone and seemed to be rejected by this big family. Now he will understand that he is not only the 7th prince, but also the 7th brother of these princes and princesses. He also has a responsibility to maintain the glory of the royal family. Ha. Well, in that case, when you are a few years older, I will let you out. Xiao Wangsun laughed. Xiao Ziyan danced happily when she heard the words, and ran back to her place. Then he played with a few little princes and princesses for a while before Xiao Ming found his seat and sat down. Seeing that everyone was seated, Xiao Wangsun clapped his hands, and the family banquet officially began. Suddenly singing, dancing and vocal music came on stage, and the entire Fulan Hall was in a good mood. Xiao Wangsun was also in a happy mood and frequently drank. Xiao Ming looked at the opposite side while enjoying the singing and dancing. King Wei and King Yang were also there. When his eyes came into contact with King Wei, King Wei's eyes flickered and he immediately raised the glass to pretend to drink, while King Yang raised the glass to face each other from a distance. Xiao Ming smiled. This time in Chang'an, this good show is still to come. It seems to be a pure family banquet. Xiao Wangsun only cares about drinking and feasting, and does not mention government affairs at all. Seeing other princes raising their glasses to toast Xiao Wangsun, Xiao Ming followed suit. An hour passed, and the family banquet was coming to an end. At this time, Xiao Ming sounded something, and he said, Father, in a few months, we will be here. The new year is coming. After this big wedding, my son will return to King Zhao. I am afraid that I will not be able to celebrate the festival with the father, so I specially brought some gadgets to the father. Ming'er is really filial. Every time I think about bringing gifts to the father, let the father see what it is. Xiao Wangsun was very happy, and his tone became more and more intimate to Xiao Ming. Xiao Ming smiled and said, I have already brought this thing. and I have asked the royal father to accompany him to the outside of the hall. For this big wedding, the son also wants to use this thing, and I hope that the royal father agrees to transfer it to the Ministry of Rites. Xiao Wangsun became more and more surprised, so he said to the prince and concubines, "Let's go, let's see what new things Qilin has tinkered with at this time." It was completely dark outside. As soon as Xiao Wangsun's voice fell, the younger princes immediately ran out cheering. They all knew that this seventh brother was a very powerful person. The prince, the second prince, the third prince, and the fourth prince showed displeased expressions. Once Xiao Ming came to Chang'an, there would be no chance for them to show their faces. In particular, the prince looked at Xiao Ming viciously, but he suddenly laughed strangely again, as if he was very proud. Chapter 384 Fireworks and Murder. P.S. There are only 3 chapters tonight. I saw that everyone in the book review area hopes to have a map of power distribution. In the past 2 days, Snail will make one and see if it can be posted. Everyone went to the door. Because there was no moon tonight, the sky was abnormally dark. Only the lanterns in the palace gave off dim light at this time. Xiao Ming said a few words to Feng Deshu. Feng Deshu left, and soon came over with the Xiao Huangman of the Bishu Pavilion, and the Xiao Huangman put a box in front of the door. Xiao Ming opened the box, which revealed King Xiao fireworks. This is a brand new batch of fireworks, and they are not the fireworks released by Xiao Ming during the Chinese New Year last time, but the fireworks of the rocket type at this time. Xiao Wangsun looked at the cylindrical and conical objects in the box and asked, "What is Qilin? Does the royal father know about firecrackers?" Xiao Ming first gave these people a vaccination, and this thing would explode. Of course I know. During the Chinese New Year, there will also be firecrackers in the palace. He is no stranger to it, but when he heard the word firecrackers, the eyes of the other little princes lit up. Xiao Ming continued, "This is somewhat similar to a firecracker, but it emits a very beautiful flame from inside." Beautiful flame? Xiao Wangsun was a little puzzled. Firecrackers are firecrackers. What does this have to do with flames, father? Rather than speaking, "It's better for my son to perform for the father." Xiao Ming laughed and said that the reason why he brought fireworks was to use it when he got married. Since he got married in this world, he had to be lively. Moreover, if these fireworks can make Xiao Wangsun happy, he will show his face in front of Xiao Wangsun again. Now he has changed his mind about forbearance towards the prince and others. People don't hurt tigers, but tigers eat people's hearts. In this case, why should he swallow his anger and be your little daughter-in-law? He will show himself in front of Xiao Ming and try his best to achieve himself through imperial power. The goal of it this time, everyone was attracted by Xiao Ming's actions. Xiao Ming picked up a 1-meter-high rocket, and then picked up a lit candle. "Father, the name of this firework is Xianwei Fixin," Xiao Ming said with a smile, and at the same time leaned the small rocket-like firework against a small tree in front of the Fulan Hall and lit the matches. The matchstick burned quickly. In just 10 seconds, the rocket fireworks suddenly flew diagonally into the sky after submerging into the dark night sky. When everyone watched intently, with a sound of boom, the fireworks in the air suddenly exploded, and the raindrop-shaped flame silver flowers scattered all over the sky, tearing apart the dark night. Colorful, extraordinarily beautiful. What? At the moment when the fireworks exploded, some young princes and princesses screamed in fright, but when they saw this beautiful scenery, they were instantly attracted by this beautiful scenery. Xiao Ming raised his head. The fireworks exploded in the air with a range of 5 or 6 meters. He stood with everyone and watched. In fact, this firework is not difficult. It was made by Chen Qi when he was studying the Tiger Squid gun. Now with the development of the King Xiao army, the army is more and more dissatisfied with the catapult, because the catapult is cumbersome, has a short range, and is extremely easy to damage. So Chen Qi prepared to produce tiger guns according to the textbook. This kind of curved guns in modern times, the Tiger Zun cannon, was invented during the Qi Zheguang period of the Ming Dynasty and was specially used for mountain operations. This cannon is very good at dealing with enemies hiding behind bunkers because of its curved fire. After research, Chen Qi felt that he could use the Tiger Squid gun to fire powder cans, so he started to manufacture the Tiger Squid gun with a short and wide barrel. But before that, he conducted some simple experiments. The method of the experiment was fireworks, so he used a paper tube and a shrunken powder can to simulate the launch of a Tiger Squid gun. As a result, the Tiger Zun cannon had not yet been produced, and he suddenly realized that reducing the powder can to the size of a cherry could make the fireworks explode in the air, saving Xiao Ming's regret that it's a pity that fireworks can't go to the sky. Therefore, in the process of experiment, he boldly created these batches of fireworks that can go to heaven. Minger, what the hell is going on? Xiao Wangsun stared at the fireworks with a look of surprise. Father, this is King Zhao's fireworks, which are filled with gunpowder. I know this gunpowder, but why does the gunpowder become colorful and so beautiful? Xiao Wangsun said incredulously. Father, this is naturally the skill of a craftsman. Xiao Wangsun nodded. Also, you have all kinds of new things in King Zhao. Come and let me try. Xiao Ming heard the words, took one out of it, and explained to Xiao Wangsun how to ignite it. Xiao Wangsun understood, and learned from Xiao Ming that it took the fireworks to the bottom, lit a candle, moved a few steps away, and then another beautiful fireworks bloomed, and the others were immediately mesmerized. I'll take one too. I'll take one too. After another fireworks exploded, the princes and princesses immediately surrounded Xiao Ming one by one. Xiao Wangsun laughed and seemed to acquiesce to the fireworks show, so Xiao Ming taught them to set off fireworks one by one. Dong dong dong. One by one fireworks went to the sky, and the sky was covered with colorful fireworks. The princes and princesses were having a good time, while the concubines and concubines watched each and every one of them in fascination. The other guards and maids in the palace also saw this spectacle, but they didn't understand what it was, thinking that something big had happened, so they came to escort them one after another. And they didn't go back to their respective places until they saw that everyone was having a good time at the same time. In the various civilian squares in Chang'an, the people also saw the beautiful fireworks over the palace. Some people were amazed at the colorful wonders above the palace, and some people even began to kneel in the direction of the palace. The crowd is having fun at this time. A small yellow door came hurriedly. Xiao Huangmin knelt down in front of Xiao Wangsun and said, Your Majesty, the people in the Minfang are now gathering, and they all say that your Majesty is the Son of Heaven, blessed by the heaven, and the heaven descends on the palace, and our country of Great Yu is also a country blessed by God. Ha ha ha. Xiao Wangsun, who was about to light the fireworks, suddenly burst out laughing. Since ancient times, the idea of divine empowerment has been deeply rooted in the hearts of the people. But Xiao Ming's unintentional fireworks confirmed his supremacy and stabilized his throne. While laughing, Xiao Wangsun suddenly put his arms around Xiao Ming's shoulders and said, Minger, you are really my lucky star. Tomorrow I will give you the three-beaded crown and make you the king of the three-beaded vassal. As soon as these words came out, both Princess Xiang Cheng and the ninth prince showed happy smiles. On the other hand, the faces of the prince, the second prince and others were extremely ugly. Thank you, Father. Xiao Ming grinned. The three-pearl vassal king meant that he was equal to King Wei and others, and also meant Xiao Ming's position in Xiao Wangsun's heart. The dinner ended in a peaceful atmosphere. Xiao Ming did not expect that he would immediately receive the honorary title of Prince of Three Pearls because of a few fireworks. However, because it was getting late, the prince was inconvenient to stay in the palace, so he and all the princes went out of the palace gate and went back separately. Outside the door, a carriage was already waiting for Xiao Ming. He got into the carriage and was about to set off when the carriage stopped in front of him, and the bead curtain was lifted, revealing the face of the third prince. Qilin, the road is not easy to walk in the dark night. The third prince said with a smile. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 385 Assassination. In the dark night, only the lantern radiated a faint light. Xiao Ming looked at the third prince's dark face in the candlelight, and was displeased. He couldn't help asking, Third brother, what do you mean by this? Nothing else, I just want to tell you that this is Chang'an, and some people are not suitable to stay here. The third prince still said with a smile. Xiao Ming's expression was cold, and he understood that he came to Chang'an to make these princes who regard Chang'an as their territory unhappy. Glancing at Xiao Zhen lightly, Xiao Ming said, Thank you third brother for reminding me, but this country of Great Yu is the kingdom of the emperor, and the city of Chang'an is also at the feet of the emperor. Whether I can stay here or not is only the emperor's decision. No one else has the right to say that. The smile on the face of the third prince solidified little by little. Xiao Ming's words were talking about his pain point. The scene of Xiao Wangsun's treatment of Xiao Ming at the family banquet is vivid in his mind, and now his position in Xiao Wangsun's heart is on an equal footing with them. Humph. The third prince said coldly, Qilin, you deserve a lot of credit. The third brother has nothing to say, it's just that the third brother is convinced, not necessarily the others. That's what the third brother said, you can understand it for yourself. After all, the third prince put down the bead curtain, and the carriage gradually disappeared into the darkness. Looking quietly at the carriage of the third prince, Xiao Ming frowned. and Xiao Zhen's sudden move made him a little confused, shaking his head. He also went to the palace under the protection of the guard sitting in the carriage. Xiao Ming was still thinking about the unusual third prince, and the more he thought about the third prince, the more frightened he became. Looking at the endless night outside, Xiao Ming felt uneasy in his heart. Just as the third prince said, Chang'an was not King Xiao at this time. He had no way of knowing what was going on here. Just when he was worried, a sound of the bowstring loosening suddenly came. In the dark night, the sound of the bowstring was very clear. In an instant, all the hairs on Xiao Ming's body exploded. Assassin! Protect His Highness! Zhao Long and Zhao Hu also heard the sound of the bowstring, and they immediately shouted at the same time. The hundreds of elite cavalry who were responsible for protecting Xiao Ming immediately protected Xiao Ming's carriage in the middle. There are assassins, the soldiers shouted. However, the sound of the bowstring loosening continued. Xiao Ming could only hear the constant dong-dong sound from the wooden planks of the carriage. At the same time, the neighing of the war horses and the screams of the soldiers kept coming. After the assassination in King Zhao, Xiao Ming has strengthened his own security precautions. This time he came to Chang'an. He also specially prepared a musket for self-defense. At this time, the danger was imminent, and he couldn't help taking out the musket hidden in the carriage. His Royal Highness, we can't see the enemy in the dark. Please, Your Highness, stay in the carriage and don't come out. Zhao Long's voice was anxious. Attacked in the dark night, they can only be beaten passively. Now Xiao Ming heard the words and looked at the box inside the carriage. This box contained fireworks to be used at the wedding banquet. He had an idea and asked Zhao Long and Zhao Hu to carry the fireworks box out, shouting, "Quick, these are fireworks, just fireworks. It's bombed, everyone can see us here, and the light from the fireworks can let you see where the enemy is." Zhao Long and Zhao Hu had been guarding both sides of the carriage. They immediately moved the fireworks outside, lit them with torches, and sent them into the sky. Boom! 6 fireworks exploded in succession in the air, and at the moment when the fireworks exploded, the ground was as bright as day. At this time, Xiao Ming saw the men in black who were approaching them. There were hundreds of them. He lifted the bead curtain and looked behind the carriage. There were also hundreds of men in black approaching the carriage. The bows and arrows on both sides did not stop from beginning to end, and they were surrounded at this time outside the carriage. Zhao Long and Zhao Hu also saw the man in black. At this time, half of the cavalry was injured by the arrow. Zhao Hu, you protect His Highness, the others come with me. Zhao Long roared. Although they were attacked, the cavalry who protected Xiao Ming did not panic. These cavalry were all cavalry who had experienced a battle of just how the slaughter on the battlefield tempered their steely will, pulled out the saber, and half of the cavalry followed Zhao Long and rushed towards the man in black, and the wounded cavalry still did not give up the fight. They all gathered towards the carriage and resisted the shooting of the bow and arrow with their flesh and blood. These cavalry are all cuirassiers. Although there is no plate armor, the cuirass on their bodies is cast to defend against bullets, because the thickness and hardness are much stronger than plate armor. Therefore, although the soldiers were injured a lot in an instant, the injuries were all on the arms and thighs, and their heads were also protected from bows and arrows because of their armor. Seeing Zhao Long led people to rush out, Zhao Hu was not idle, and he scolded, "You little rats, today your grandfather Zhao will teach you how to be human." As he spoke, Zhao Long distributed the fireworks to the soldiers and shouted, "Target the fireworks at these dog thieves and blow them up." With that said, Zhao Long picked up a rocket, ignited it, and shot it into the crowd. Boom! The fireworks flew out and exploded among the men in black, and several screams sounded, and then the light of the fireworks illuminated the surrounding area like a ghost. The men in black had reached the place where the carriage was less than 20 meters away at this time. Other soldiers also picked up all kinds of fireworks and lit them, some of which were jet-type fireworks, which were enough to spray on the ground for 1 minute. Such fireworks were lit, and suddenly, the surroundings continued to glow. Zhao Long and more than 20 cavalrymen formed a tight formation and slammed into the man in black. It's just that they can only block the black-clothed men from behind. But they can't care about the black-clothed men from the front. The men in black burst into a roar when they entered the 10-meter range of the carriage, and they all charged at Xiao Ming with short swords in their hands. Zhao Long threw the fireworks on the ground to take a look at the door. At this time, he led other soldiers to surround the carriage and looked at the man in black fiercely. "If you want to kill His Highness, you have to step over our corpse." Pulling out his waist knife, Zhao Long stood in front of the carriage by himself. At this moment, the man in black rushed in front of him, and the guards in front of the carriage immediately fought with the man in black. Xiao Ming sat in the carriage and watched all this. He thought that the trip to Chang'an would not be peaceful here, but he did not expect that someone would want to kill him. Thinking of the reminder in front of the palace of the three emperors, a layer of cold sweat formed on his back. If it wasn't for the third prince, this incident would have been premeditated. Someone wanted to kill him and then hurry up. The number of people in black is increasing, and the scene of Zhao Long and the guards fighting seems to be playing like a movie screen in front of Xiao Ming. There was a trace of cruelty at the corner of his mouth. Xiao Ming flew up, took out two muskets, and shot at the two men in black who rushed towards Zhao Long at the same time. Boom! The two men in black who had just rushed to Zhao Long's side fell to the sound of gunfire. Chapter 386. P.S. There are only 2 shifts today. Please allow the snails to rest a little on the first day of New Year's Day, and they will make up all the debts tomorrow. His Royal Highness, why did you come out? Go back quickly. Zhao Long hurriedly said that at this time, he had no regard for honor and inferiority, and yelled at Xiao Ming. This king is not a scholar who has no power. Xiao Ming said coldly. Without the courage to face swords and guns on the battlefield, how could he defeat his vicious enemy? Since someone wants to play with him, he has to play to the end. Biting open the ammunition pack, Xiao Ming poured the bullet into the musket, and fired another shot at the man in black who rushed over. This short-barreled musket has a very short range, but is very easy to reload. Just pour the gunpowder in and fire it again. Xiao Ming constantly relied on the protection of the carriage to shoot at the men in black outside. Seeing Xiao Ming fighting in person, the guards around the carriage became more and more brave. At this time, they only had one belief in their hearts, that is, Xiao Ming could not be injured. It's just that there are too many people in black outside. Although his soldiers are very good at fighting, there are still soldiers falling in a pool of blood. The protection circle was squeezed smaller and smaller by the men in black, and the guards fell into a pool of blood one by one. Looking at the protection circle with only more than 30 people left, Xiao Ming felt cold in his heart. Could it be that his own way is about to end in Chang'an? Who is going to kill himself? When he was in despair, a rumbling sound of hooves suddenly sounded, and the man in black immediately fled everywhere. When he heard the sound, not long after, a dense mass of torches appeared in Xiao Ming's field of vision, and thousands of cavalrymen appeared on Suzaku Avenue. Xiao Ming breathed a sigh of relief when he saw the armor of these cavalrymen. This was the Yuling cavalry guard in the palace gate. His Royal Highness King Qi. When the general who led the cavalry saw Xiao Ming, he immediately exclaimed, "General Du!" In the firelight, Xiao Ming also saw the appearance of the person who came. It was none other than Du Boyuan's father, Du Heng, who was specially responsible for protecting the security of the palace. "Your Highness, what's going on?" Du Heng glanced at the messy battlefield and was shocked. At this moment, there were more than 200 black corpses lying on the ground, among which were soldiers wearing silver breastplates. These were the personal guards of King Qi. "Someone wants to assassinate this king." Xiao Ming's voice was like the cold wind in the cold winter. Looking at the soldiers who died fighting for him, his heart was bleeding. "Zhao Hu, wake up, Zhao Hu." Zhao Long's voice suddenly sounded, very sad. Xiao Ming was startled and immediately walked towards Zhao Long, only to see Zhao Hu lying in Zhao Long's arms, and Zhao Hu was covered in knife wounds. He said to Du Heng, "General Du, let's save people first." Du Heng reacted and immediately asked his subordinates to save the people. He shouted, "What are you still doing? Don't send people to the Tai hospital, hurry up." Turning his head, he said to Xiao Ming, "His Majesty saw that there were fireworks released here. I was afraid that His Majesty, in addition to an accident, specially asked the late general to come to rescue. His Majesty is already waiting for His Highness in the palace. Please come with us." Xiao Ming nodded. He can't go back to the palace tonight. These men in black can ambush him here, and it is impossible to ambush him around the palace. Du Heng mounted the horse. Xiao Ming immediately walked over to Zhao Long, picked up Zhao Hu on the ground and sent it to the carriage. He said to Zhao Long, "Don't cry, Zhao Hu is not dead yet, so we will send them to the Imperial Hospital soon. Help the wounded soldiers to the carriage, quick." Only then did Zhao Long react, and he immediately went to help the other seriously injured soldiers. At this time, Xiao Ming mounted his horse and followed Du Heng to the palace in the imperial study. Xiao Wangxuan was walking around restlessly, and when he saw fireworks appearing inexplicably, he felt unusual because Xiao Ming will definitely not set off fireworks again. As someone who came from the Battle of the Princes, he immediately realized the danger, so he sent Du Heng to see what was going on. While he was worried, there was a sound of footsteps outside, and then he saw Xiao Ming, who was covered in blood, walking in Mingar. This. Xiao Wangxuan said in shock, "Are you injured?" "No." Xiao Ming said calmly, "Father, my son was assassinated within 5 miles of leaving the palace. All of my son's guards were killed in battle. I hope father and son will decide for my son." "Assassination? Xiao Ming's words came out almost word for word, and Xiao Wangsun could feel Xiao Ming's anger after he was surprised. He became furious. Someone dares to assassinate the prince under my nose. It's so outrageous. Du Heng took my tiger talisman to mobilize the left and right military guards, and immediately searched the entire Chang'an city for me, and he must assassinate all of them. Find out the mastermind behind the king. Yes, your majesty. Du Heng responded, and immediately left with the imperial army. His chest heaved violently. Xiao Wangsun looked at Xiao Ming. This time Xiao Ming made such a great contribution, but he was assassinated before he received the reward, which made his face dull. Chang'an city is at the foot of the emperor, and the open assassination of the prince is not only an insult to Xiao Ming, but also an insult to him. Minger, I will definitely give you an explanation, no matter who it is, I will definitely give you justice. Xiao Wangsun said firmly to Xiao Ming. At this time, Xiao Ming couldn't say anything. He couldn't blame Xiao Wangsun, but he had to avenge this revenge. Thank you, Father Wang. My son is for the great Yu Kingdom, and I have done my best for the royal family. Now someone wants to kill my son. Father, is it wrong for my son to do it? Xiao Ming said. Xiao Wangsun felt more and more guilty after what Xiao Ming said. He said, Minger, how could this be wrong? Without you, how could there be the stability of the royal family now? And the royal father knows in his heart how important you are to the great Yu Kingdom. With the words of the father and the emperor, my son will feel at ease. Xiao Ming said lightly. He said this on purpose, in order to put the murderer to death. Since the murderer killed him, why should he continue to endure it? Xiao Wangsun heaved a sigh of relief and said to Xiao Ming, don't go back tonight, just stay in the Bishu Pavilion for the time being. Xiao Ming nodded, answered yes, and walked towards the Bishu Pavilion under the guidance of Xiao Huangmin. Watching Xiao Ming leave, Xiao Wangsun said to Feng Deshu, go and call Yang Zhen. What are they doing at Lijiangmen? And there is no news of such a big incident. Yes, your majesty, Shanhaiguan is now in the hands of His Royal Highness King Qi. If His Highness has 3 strengths and 2 weaknesses in Chang'an, the soldiers under King Qi will not rebel, and they will let the barbarians enter the customs in a rage, and the great Yu Kingdom will be over. Feng Deshu said in a hurry. After Xiao Wangsun heard the words, a layer of cold sweat suddenly appeared behind him. Now that the strength of King Yang has been greatly reduced, if Xiao Ming died at this time, it would be equivalent to forcing the soldiers under King Qi to rebel. At that time, no one would be able to resist the barbarians entering the customs. Who is going to destroy my great Yu country in the first place? Xiao Wangsun's eyes gradually turned red. I must crush him to ashes. Feng Deshu nodded. That's right, this person really has sinister intentions and should be killed. Chapter 387 Clues. Chang'an City is destined to be restless tonight. When Du Heng arrived at the left and right Wu Wei with a military talisman, the army immediately dispatched, and the soldiers poured into the streets and alleys of Chang'an City with torches. Keep up, search for me one by one. Your Majesty has an order. Even if you turn over the city of Chang'an, you will also catch the assassins. The street looked deep and dark in the darkness, and Du Heng's eyes were cold. He has followed Xiao Wangsun for a long time, and naturally he knows the status of King Qi in Xiao Wangsun's eyes now, especially this time Xiao Ming won the Shanhaiguan. These days, Xiao Wangsun talks about Xiao Ming almost every day because it was King Qi's repeated military exploits that gradually washed away the humiliation of the great Yu Kingdom over the years, and the rise of a powerful royal vassal made the kings of the opposite sex restrain their arrogance one by one. Yes, after receiving the order, soldiers like wolves and tigers poured into the streets and alleys of Chang'an City. This time, neither the ordinary people nor the royal family members could stop the left and right military guards from searching, showing how angry Xiao Wangsun was while he was commanding the soldiers to search. The gate of a house suddenly opened, and a man walked out while wearing his clothes. When the man saw that it was Du Heng, he couldn't help but ask, Du Heng, what's wrong with this? It's so inspiring. It turned out to be the Book of Feis Hong. Seeing a person coming, Du Heng let go of his vigilance and said, Feis Hongshu doesn't know anything. His Royal Highness King Qi was attacked when he returned to his residence after attending a family banquet. Now I am being ordered to search Chang'an City. Someone attacked King Qi. Fiji was shocked, and he hurriedly asked, is King Qi okay now? His Royal Highness is safe and sound, but the guards around him have been killed and injured many times. Your Majesty is angry because of this. The Emperor's feet dare to be so arrogant. He is simply out of control. Fiji was furious. This Xiao Ming was already his prospective son-in-law, and he was naturally very angry when such a thing happened. While the two were talking, some soldiers were about to rush into Fei's house to search. Du Heng shouted. At this time, There is no need to search Fei's Hongshu's house, so as not to disturb Miss Fei, Fiji said. General Du, this is unnecessary. Since it is His Majesty's order, this search should still be searched. This official does not want to be offended. Hearing this, Du Heng said, since this is the case, Du Mu will be offended. Fiji nodded and entered the courtyard with Du Heng. The chaos outside also awakened Fei Yuer. She and Xiao Ahun also came out of the boudoir. After seeing Fiji, they couldn't help asking, Dad, what's wrong? Fiji sighed and told Xiao Ming's assassination. Fei Yuer and Xiao Huan suddenly turned pale with fright, but after learning that Xiao Ming was safe and sound, Fei Yuer breathed a sigh of relief. She said, dare to assassinate His Highness on the first day he enters the city? Father, who would be so big? Courage. You said that if King Qi died, who would benefit the most? Fiji is also thinking about this issue, and taking such a desperate risk proves that this force has fallen into madness. Of course it's the prince. Now that His Royal Highness King Qi is so favored, and he has military skills. Isn't this exactly the same as His Majesty back then? And His Majesty has the intention of moving the capital. If you go to Bian's Hao, the palace will be in His Highness's Eyelids. Underground. Fei Yuer frowned and analyzed. Fiji paced back and forth, thinking hard. You can figure this out, and others can also figure it out. Although the prince is stupid, he is not surrounded by stupid people, that's all. Don't do it until things are settled. Just guessing. Fei Yuer nodded lightly, her bright eyes still full of worry. The next morning Xiao Ming got up very early. Last night, concubine Zhen was so frightened that she cried when he learned that he had been assassinated. It was only after his hard persuasion that concubine Zhen felt a little relieved. He hadn't slept all night last night. He had been thinking about who was going to assassinate him, but after thinking about it, he felt that many people had reasons to kill him. Now his only clue is the specious remarks made by the third prince when he was about to leave. It's just that he knows that when he goes to confront the third prince at this time, he will not admit it, and this sentence does not explain much. After a simple meal, he went directly to the Thai hospital, where all the guards who were injured last night were sent here for treatment, and Xiao Ming's heart twitched when he learned that more than 20 guards could not be rescued. His Royal Highness, the imperial doctor of the imperial hospital, said that Zhao Hu would not die. Zhao Long also stayed up all night, and he had been staying at the imperial hospital to take care of the soldiers. This is good, this is good. Xiao Ming patted Zhao Long on the shoulder. The two had followed him for a long time, saying that it was impossible to have no relationship. Zhao Long then sighed and said, it's a pity that those 20 soldiers did not die on the battlefield with the barbarians, but they died in their own hands. This is wrong. These assassins are barbarians. They are not their own. The two were talking when suddenly a voice came. An old man wearing a dark round neck gown and a long beard came out from the corner. Dr. Wu. Xiao Ming knew this imperial physician. When his predecessor was sick, this imperial physician Wu treated him. In the imperial hospital, this imperial physician Wu was also recognized for his superb medical skills. His Royal Highness. Wu Shank bowed to Xiao Ming. The bodies of these assassins are in the morgue, and the officer has already examined them. Although there is basically no difference between these assassins and the people of Dayou, they can still be identified carefully. I can tell that these assassins are all descendants of the barbarians and the people of Dayou. Beg. Zhao Long cursed. Although Zhao Long's words are vulgar, they are true. If Wu Shank's words are correct, these people are probably the descendants of barbarians and slaves of the Great Yu Kingdom. Are the barbarians trying to kill me? Xiao Ming asked uncertainly. Zhao Long pondered for a while and said, Your Highness, it's not impossible. It is said that the barbarians specially trained a group of bastards just to let them sneak into the Great Yu Kingdom to assassinate. When Shanhaiguan was captured, the bastards' contribution was not small. It was only when they penetrated into Shanhaiguan and assassinated the generals who guarded the pass that the guards were leaderless. Xiao Ming nodded. If there was no reminder from the third prince, he would have believed that it was the barbarians, but now he still has some doubts in his heart. Dr. Wu, can you be sure? Xiao Ming asked again. It is certain that the hair of the barbarians is somewhat curly, and the hair of these people spread out. 9 times out of 10, the same is true. Generally speaking, the descendants of barbarian men and women from the Great Yu Kingdom will have this characteristic. Wu Shank said. Then he said, His Royal Highness, the lower official has to report this matter to your Majesty and bid farewell. Xiao Ming nodded and said, This king is also going to the father in front of him, so let's go together. After all, the two went to the front hall together. Chapter 388, Offensive and Defensive Trends. Barbarian. In the imperial study, Xiao Wangxun was surprised when he learned that the assassin was from a barbarian tribe. Father, It's good that the assassins are from barbarians, but there were no less than 300 assassins who assassinated Urchin last night. How did such a scale of assassins enter Chang'an City? It's too strange. This assassination is just right for Urchin. If it is to the Emperor, speaking of which, Xiao Ming did not say anything. He was deliberately frightening Xiao Wangsun. Sure enough, Xiao Wangsun's face became extremely embarrassed. He said, "You are right. We have sent people from Lijingmen to investigate this matter. Don't worry, the royal father will definitely give you an explanation." "Thank you, father. It's just that my son has another request." "Let's talk. If I can promise you, the royal father will definitely do it." Xiao Wangsun felt a little guilty towards Xiao Ming. This great achievement has not yet been awarded, but at this time he encountered such a thing. There are still no traces of the remaining assassins. For the safety of Urchin, please allow the Emperor to allow Urchin to expand the number of personal guards to 1,000. Xiao Ming said in Chang'an, the number of personal guards that each feudal lord can carry is limited, which is to prevent chaos. Considering Xiao Ming's current situation, Xiao Wangsun nodded and said, "I'm sure. Thank you, father." Xiao Ming bowed. Now Du Heng is still searching for assassins in Chang'an City, but there is no news so far, and because of the assassination, Xiao Wangsun has no intention of going to court. The two said a few words. Xiao Ming left the imperial study, and he was going to find the third prince outside the palace gate. Xiao Ming asked Zhao Long to dispatch troops and horses to the Jinwu Wei camp. After a while, Qi Guanggai arrived at the palace gate with 1,000 cavalry. After getting on a horse, Xiao Ming led 1,000 cavalry directly to the third prince's mansion, and the 1,000 cavalry blocked the water surrounding the third prince's mansion. "Xiao Ming, what do you mean?" Knowing that Xiao Ming came with a heavy army, the third prince arrived outside the palace, and his face was extremely ugly. Having spent so long in the Great Yu Kingdom, it is natural to know that whoever is favored can walk sideways in Chang'an. These princes and elder brothers have always proved this to him before. 7 years ago, whether it was the crown prince, the second prince or the third prince, all of them blatantly humiliated him. What is the third brother doing so nervously? The third brother said that it is difficult to walk in Chang'an in the dark. "I can only take some more soldiers and horses to go with me." Xiao Ming rode on the horse, just like the third prince, who rode on the horse and looked down at him condescendingly. When he came to Chang'an, Xiao Ming decided not to blindly hide his strengths and bide his time, but to be both offensive and defensive. Previously, anger that had no strength was meaningless to him, but now for him, the truth is only within the range of artillery. It makes sense to have a big fist. He doesn't have so much time to play tricks with these princes. Xiao Zhen's face was ashen. If it was before, how could Xiao Ming dare to be so arrogant in front of him? Seeing the third prince gnashing his teeth, Xiao Ming continued, "Third brother, don't you invite me to sit in. I still have a lot of things to tell my third brother." "Such as the Dutch thing?" As soon as these words came out, the pupils of the third prince quickly enlarged, and his body seemed to be stiff together. Looking at Xiao Ming, who was confident, Xiao Zhen suddenly felt that this seventh younger brother, whom he had looked down on before, was so terrifying. "Please." Xiao Zhen's eyes narrowed. "Just the seventh brother is not afraid that entering my palace is like entering a tiger's den." Xiao Ming dismounted, walked towards the palace of the third prince, and said with a smile, "The third brother is joking, but if I have an accident, I guarantee that no one will be alive in this palace." Xiao Zhen's heart froze. Xiao Ming's tone carried a strong killing intent. He looked at the cavalry that Xiao Ming brought, and these cavalry also gave him a very dangerous feeling. When he arrived at the main hall of the palace, Xiao Ming took a seat and sat down, while the third prince sat on the main seat. At this time, the third prince said, "Seventh brother, the incident of your assassination last night has caused a lot of trouble in the city, but this matter really has nothing to do with me." "I know it has nothing to do with the third brother, but what the third brother said last night must have been an accusation, but I think the third brother is also watching a play. If I die, I will be clean, and if I live, I can talk about it. Let's talk, isn't it?" Xiao Ming said with narrowed eyes. "Seventh brother is really smart." Xiao Zhen's eyes were sharp. "I do know some clues about this matter, but why should I tell seventh brother?" Looking at the environment in the main hall, Xiao Ming suddenly saw a delicate mirror in the corner of the main hall. It's just that this mirror is very different from the mirror in King Zhao. Ignoring what the third prince said, he just stood up and walked towards the mirror. The third prince was stunned for a moment, looking at the place Xiao Ming was walking towards, with a hint of panic in his eyes. "This mirror is really beautiful, but it's not made in King Zhao." Xiao Ming picked up the mirror and said, "It's also from the Dutch, right? How much does it cost?" The third prince was a little helpless. Xiao Ming came too fast. He could not clean up in time. He sighed and said, "Yes, this is indeed from a Dutch businessman. As for the price, it is 5 times the price of King Zhao mirror. Now you should satisfied 5 times. Hey, this Dutchman is really black. Did the King Zhao mirror let the King of Chu smash the Dutchman's mirror into his own hands and lost a lot of money?" Xiao Ming smiled maliciously. Li Keitun once told him that he once gave the mirror to the Prince of Chu as a gift, but the Prince of Chu was not only unhappy, but also a little annoyed. From then on he knew there might be something amiss. While speaking, Xiao Ming stared into the eyes of the third prince and found that his pupils shrank. Seventh brother can't hide anything. At the same time that King Zhao was selling mirrors, the Dutch also brought in a batch of mirrors, but as you can imagine, these mirrors are too expensive to compete with seventh brother's mirrors. Now you should be satisfied. The third prince said, almost gritted his teeth, overjoyed in his heart. Xiao Ming threw the mirror on the table. He said, "Even if I don't mention this, the third brother still talks about how to tell me who sent the assassins, not to mention the barbarians. This can't deceive me, so the seventh brother already knows that these people are mixed-race barbarians? Haha, well, in that case, let's get straight to the point. If you die, the Dutchman's secret will not be revealed, at least a few years later. I leak it again, but I can only talk to you now. The condition of this exchange is the Dutchman. Now that you know all about it, you must also understand that the relationship between the King of Chu and the Dutchman is not a matter of a year or two, but now this matter is becoming more and more difficult to hide, so we hope that the seventh brother can help us through this matter smoothly." Chapter 389, The East Palace Incident. P.S. There are 2 more chapters to come. Go through smoothly. There were only Xiao Zhen and Xiao Ming in the main hall. Facing Xiao Zhen's words, Xiao Ming's brows could not help but wrinkle. That's right, I will take the initiative to confess the Dutch affairs to the royal father when the seventh brother comes to Chang'an this time. The royal father will definitely be furious at that time. At that time, I hope that the seventh brother will be able to say something nice for me. Xiao Ming couldn't help laughing when he heard the words, "The third brother is not the third brother. Before I get into trouble, the third brother will take the initiative to confess to the father. It seems that the third brother has already guessed that I will shake it out in the court." Speaking of this, Xiao Ming finally figured out Xiao Zhen's purpose. Since the Cao family transferred part of the industry to King Zhao, the King of Chu probably knew that the Cao family had told Xiao Ming about the Dutch, so he discussed the matter with Xiao Zhen at this time. Xiao Zhen also learned that someone was going to assassinate Xiao Ming, so such a scene was staged in front of the palace gate. If Xiao Ming is dead, he naturally doesn't need to worry about anything. If Xiao Ming is not dead, he can use this matter to deal with Xiao Ming, in order to prevent Xiao Ming from taking the initiative to sue. Otherwise, once Xiao Wangsun learned about this, he would definitely be very dissatisfied with the King of Chu, and even thought that the King of Chu was going to rebel, and his throne would be in the future, and he would even lose Xiao Wangsun's favor. Xiao Zhen smiled wryly, "Isn't it? The Cao family visited the seventh brother more than once, and even supported the seventh brother's northern expedition. I don't believe that Cao's Hangyang didn't tell you about the Dutch. It is not necessary for the Cao family to say that. This king is also clear. My fleet has not only met the Dutch, but also the Great Britain." Xiao Ming said lightly. Xiao Zhen glanced at Xiao Ming in surprise again, and he became more and more unable to see the details of Xiao Ming. After a pause, Xiao Ming said, "Let's talk about the clues you know, then I will speak for you in front of the father." After receiving Xiao Ming's promise, Xiao Zhen sighed. "So far, it seems that only the East Palace has not been searched, Prince." Xiao Ming's heart sank. "I didn't say this. I only know that the prince has a hobby, that is, pretending to be a barbarian to play in the East Palace, so he always likes to collect bastards with barbarian blood." Xiao Zhen smiled lightly. "I only recently learned about this secret of turning his eyes." Xiao Ming stood up. He has no clues from Xiao Zhen, and now he can only start from the East Palace. But the prince is the prince, and this time Du Hang did not dare to lead anyone to search the East Palace. After all, without Xiao Wangsun's order, no one dared to go. Since that's the case, I'm going to meet the royal father to search the East Palace now." Xiao Ming said loudly. Xiao Zhen also stood up and hurriedly said, "I don't know about this. I hope that the seventh brother will no longer be the father and emperor, and don't mention me." Xiao Ming nodded, ignored Xiao Zhen, and left Xiao Zhen's palace. Looking at the back of Xiao Ming's departure, Xiao Zhen showed a sneer at the corner of his mouth. At this time, a person walked out of the corner. It was Li Zhang, the servant of the household. "Your Highness." This trick is really clever at killing two birds with one stone. Li Zhuang smiled. My uncle has won the prize. It's just a little trick. Now Xiaoming is favored by his father. If the father finds out that the prince did this, he will definitely strengthen his determination to abolish the reserve, because it will be difficult to appease Xiaoming if he does not abolish the prince. Li Zhuang smiled and said, what's even better is that Xiaoming can put the Dutch thing out of the way for us. Xiao Zhen laughed, but his expression changed, and he suddenly said, but is this really what the crown prince did? I always feel that this matter is not so simple. It doesn't matter whether the prince did it or not. As long as an assassin is found in the East Palace, the prince's position will not be preserved, Li Zhuang said. Xiao Zhen nodded slowly outside the door. Xiaoming returned to the palace with his guards. He wouldn't believe all Xiao Zhen's words, but he also believed that Xiao Zhen wouldn't make fun of him about the Dutchman. Now Xiao Zhen's words are the only clue. When he arrived in the palace, Xiaoming went straight to the imperial study, where he met Du Hangminger. The military guards on the left and right searched Chang'an City, but did not find any clues of the assassin. Xiao Wangsun said to Xiaoming with a headache. Du Hang glanced at Xiaoming carefully, and said cautiously, Your Majesty, there is actually one place that has not been searched. Where? Xiao Wangsun frowned in pain, because all his plans were disrupted because of this assassin. East Palace. Du Hang said cautiously. Xiao Wangsun suddenly opened his eyes. He stared at Du Hang, then looked at Xiaoming, and said slowly for a long time, Let's go to the East Palace with you, father. The crown prince is the future heir. This matter is a big deal, so let's forget it. I believe that the prince's brother will not do this. Xiaoming didn't expect Du Hang to mention this matter in the first place on the surface. However, he still has to resign. After all, this matter is very sensitive, and he doesn't want to be put on the title of a coveted prince. The prince is my son, and you are also my son. Since you believe that the prince is innocent, why don't you do a search? Let's go. Xiao Wangsun stood up and walked towards the East Palace. First, the East Palace and the Imperial Palace are adjacent palaces. Once promoted to the prince will move into the East Palace to live. Since then, the East Palace has been equivalent to a small imperial court. A group entered the East Palace directly from the side hall of the palace, and when they learned that Xiao Wangsun was coming, the prince immediately greeted him. But when the prince saw Xiaoming, his expression changed immediately. The news of Xiaoming's assassination had already reached the East Palace, which made him a little gloating. But now that Xiao Wangsun brought Du Hang and Xiaoming to the East Palace, the meaning was different. Search. Xiao Wangsun looked cold, not to mention the assassination of Xiao Wangsun. Even the assassination of an ordinary prince was enough to make him angry, which was a provocation to his imperial power. Du Hang replied yes, and searched the East Palace under the stunned eyes of the prince. Royal father, this matter has nothing to do with my son. Xiaoming, are you framing me? The prince said angrily without waiting for Xiaoming to speak. Xiao Wangsun said, this matter is my idea. The entire Chang'an City has been searched, why can't you search your East Palace? The prince opened his mouth in surprise. Cold sweat gradually broke out on his head, and his eyes followed Du Hang. Knowing that the son is no better than his father, Xiao Wangsun saw the strangeness of the prince, and his heart suddenly became half cold. It was also at this time that the searching soldier suddenly shouted, he is a barbarian half-blood, catch him. As this sound came out, there was a sound of swords hitting each other. Xiao Wangsun's expression changed greatly. He kicked the prince to the ground and cursed, you bastard. You really did this thing, you are so disappointed. The crown prince looked at a loss, and he said eagerly, father, this is not what I thought. Chapter 390 Borrowing a Knife to Kill? P.S. I originally wanted to update 2 chapters, but the concubine really can't do it. Today can only be 4 updates, but the chapters owed by the snail will definitely be made up. Tomorrow will be 6 more, otherwise the snail will live broadcast and cut JJ. The sound of fighting continued to sound in the East Palace with the influx of soldiers. The shouts of killing gradually weakened, and soon Du Hang led 13 people to Xiao Wangsun. Seeing the attire of these 13 people, Xiao Wangsun's anger surged up, and he was about to fall when his body shook. Father. Xiaoming hurried over to support Xiao Wangsun. After closing his eyes and resting for a while, Xiao Wangsun slowly stood up and let out a breath. He asked, Prince, what is your explanation now? The 13 people in front of them are not much different from those of the people of Dayou, but at this time these 13 people are wearing barbarian costumes, their hair is disheveled, and the most important thing is that their hair is a little curly, which is the characteristic of barbarians. Just like the group of people who killed Xiaoming. Imperial father, Imperial father. The prince's tears were about to fall. Speak. Xiao Wangxun suddenly drew out Du Heng's sword in anger and pointed at the prince. The crown prince was so frightened that his face paled. By the furious Xiao Wangxun, he stammered and said, "Father, my son really didn't assassinate Xiao Ming. These are all slaves bought by my son, just to play with my son. Play. Xiao Wangxun's face flushed with anger. The person in front of him is the crown prince, the future heir of the great Yu kingdom. Not to mention whether he assassinated Xiao Ming, he actually hid the barbarians in the East Palace. Even if these people were half of the great Yu kingdom blood, even a commoner would know that these people's the hardest for the barbarians playing. The prince lay on the ground, breathing quickly. Even though he was not a smart person, he knew that this matter could not be said. "Your Majesty, be merciful." When the swords were drawn, suddenly a voice came, and everyone turned their heads, but it was Queen Zhao who came over with a concubine. "Queen Mother, save me." Seeing Queen Zhao's arrival, the prince seemed to grab a life-saving straw and threw himself at Queen Zhao's feet. Xiao Wangxun was still angry. He sneered, "Your news is well informed. Did you already know that the prince is hiding these barbarians in the East Palace? It's a waste of me to trust your Zhao family so much. Is that how you treat me?" Empress Zhao had no idea what was going on. It was just that when he learned that Xiao Wangxun brought a large number of soldiers into the East Palace, he felt that something was wrong, so he went to the East Palace unexpectedly. When he came in, he saw Xiao Wangxun pointing his sword at the crown prince, and she then came out to save her being caught by Xiao Wangxun. "Hechi?" Empress Zhao suddenly knelt down in front of Xiao Wangxun. She said, "Your Majesty, the concubine does not know what the crown prince did to make the emperor so angry, but the crown prince is the crown prince and your son after all. I hope the emperor will listen to you." The prince explained. Okay, let him explain. "Explain where these barbarians come from," Xiao Wangxun said angrily. Empress Zhao helped the prince up at this time and asked anxiously, "What's going on? You haven't made it clear to your royal father." With the support of Queen Zhao, the prince said softly, "These barbarians were bought by Urchin to play the role of barbarians. Urchin played the Khan of the barbarians, and they played the Taiji and generals of the barbarians." Hearing the prince's words, the sword in Xiao Wangxun's hand hung down weakly, and he said, "What, a prince of the great Yu kingdom, the future king, you actually like being a barbarian Khan so much? It's ridiculous and shameful." At the end of the sentence, Xiao Wangxun almost shouted. Empress Zhao's face gradually turned cold. She raised her hand and gave the prince a slap in the face, and said angrily, "No matter what you are doing, you can't even tell right from wrong now. The barbarians are the enemies of the great Yu kingdom." To play this ridiculous game, the crown prince thought that Queen Zhao would protect him, but this slap completely blinded him, and now he finally understands the seriousness of the matter. At this moment, Du Heng hesitated and said, "Your Majesty, I found wounds on these people's bodies, which seem to have been left from last night." Du Heng's words completely ignited Xiao Wangxun's anger. He said to Du Heng, "Immediately block the East Palace. Before the matter is investigated clearly, no one can enter the East Palace without my hand." "Yes, Your Majesty." Du Heng responded. Although Empress Zhao wanted to intercede for the crown prince, he understood that now was not the time, and she should know about Xiao Ming's assassination. After all, this matter can be big or small. The prince's face was ashen, and blocking the East Palace basically meant grounding. He looked at Xiao Ming resentfully and scolded, "You despicable villain, this must be your scheming. Xiao Ming, you think you can replace it with a little credit? Me? Dreaming." Xiao Ming sneered, ignoring the crazy-looking prince, and walked to the palace with Xiao Wangxun, leaving only the prince's hysterical shouting. Taking the assassins found from the East Palace back to the palace, Xiao Wangxun asked Du Heng to immediately escort these assassins for interrogation, and he asked deeply, "When you came to see me, you knew there was something wrong with the prince, right?" "Yes, the royal father must have known that I went to the third brother's house." Xiao Ming said, "HMPH, the second, the third and fourth are not fuel-efficient lamps. This time, they really found a reason to waste storage, but Ninger, don't let them use you, you will be murdered by them." Sword. At this moment, Xiao Wangxun's eyes were extremely deep, as if he knew everything. Xiao Ming pondered for a while and said, "Don't worry, the royal father, my son won't trust them easily." "Well, that's fine, so do you believe that the prince wants to kill you?" Xiao Wangxun continued. "I don't believe it," Xiao Ming said very directly. Just as Xiao Wangxun said, he did not want to be a killing sword in the hands of others. Xiao Wangxun nodded lightly. "You are a smart person, don't worry, I will give you justice and give you the real behind-the-scenes mastermind. Now you should prepare for your marriage, and it will be a big wedding soon." I don't want this matter to affect your marriage with Fei Yuer, so you can go back for now." This time Xiao Ming came to Chang'an for the ultimate purpose of marrying Fei Yuer. According to the date, there was less than half a month before their wedding date. "Yes, royal father." Xiao Ming nodded and bowed to leave. At this point, Xiao Ming could only wait for Xiao Wangxun's answer, and the more people want to use his hand to pull the prince down, the less he will be able to let these people do what they want. On the contrary, he will use this to find out the real mastermind behind the scenes. After leaving the palace gate, Xiao Ming returned to the temporary palace in Chang'an. Before he got to the palace, Xiao Ming saw a lot of carriages parked in front of his temporary palace. He stopped in front of the door, and a man suddenly walked towards him. It was King Wei. Chapter 391, Squeezing King Wei. "My nephew." Outside the palace, King Wei seemed to be waiting for a long time. When he saw Xiao Ming coming, King Wei immediately greeted Xiao Ming. At this time, Aster and Luo also came out of the palace at the same time. The two immediately rushed towards Xiao Ming and carefully looked at Xiao Ming. Seeing that Xiao Ming was safe and sound, the two were relieved. Last night they also learned that Xiao Ming had encountered an assassin, and they have been worried until now. "This king is fine, you can rest assured," Xiao Ming said to the two of them. Then he turned to King Wei. "I don't know why Uncle Sanheron came to find me." With a smile on his face and a big belly, King Wei said, "My nephew, it's inconvenient to talk here. Why don't my nephew come with me to the Red Sleeve Square in Chang'an City for tea?" "This is not necessary. My nephew's wedding is imminent. I don't want to provoke gossip outside." Xiao Ming frowned. He didn't know whether this King Wei was really stupid or fake. At this time, he still wanted to take him go to that fireworks place. King Wei seemed to have come to a realization. He said to Xiao Ming, "Oh, you look at my brain, I forgot about this. Yes, if that's the case, please ask my nephew to choose a place just in the palace." Xiao Ming walked straight into the courtyard. Because of this assassination, he didn't believe anyone, especially this King Wei. In the Battle of Jizhao, he was able to send an army like Shanxiang in such an important battle. What else could he not do? He lives alone in Kingzhou, and he is still too tender compared to these people who are in the circle of scheming. Whether it is the third prince, King Wei, or others, these people are digging a hole for him to jump in. He doesn't want to die before he is successful, so now he can only play 200% of his energy, and avoid going to any places he is not familiar with. After the wedding, he will return to Kingzhou and leave Chang'an alone. Broken thing, if anyone provokes him in the future, he will directly use guns to teach them how to behave. When he arrived at the palace, Xiao Ming took King Wei to the main hall. In the Great Yu Kingdom, the settings of each palace were basically similar, so there was also a main hall for discussing matters. "Nephew, this time Uncle Wang is just here to ask for nephew." King Wei flattered. Xiao Ming sneered, "Uncle Wang is talking about Shanxiang, but my nephew really wants to talk to the father, so that the father can see the true face of the three emperors and see how the three emperors are on the battlefield with me." While speaking, Xiao Ming suddenly threw the teacup on the table, and the tea splashed all over the place. Xiao Ming was so arrogant, and King Wei suddenly changed color. He was a high-ranking man. Whoever saw him in the entire Great Yu Kingdom was not respectful, but now he was humiliated by a junior. He couldn't help but feel a fire in his heart, but he thought that if Xiao Ming really pursued this matter in front of Xiao Wangxun, I am afraid that he would really annoy Xiao Wangxun. Over the years, he has known this brother very well. It seems that he doesn't care about anything, like a stupefied monarch, but this brother has learned something bright in his heart. He knew in his heart that Xiao Wangxun didn't believe him for a long time, and the reason why he didn't show it and gave him a lot of awards was just because there were barbarians in the north, and he was surrounded by vassal kings with different surnames. It can be said that he was very important to Xiao Wangxun in the past, but now it is different. Xiao Ming has risen strongly, and this time Xiao Ming has repelled the barbarians and took away Shanhaiguan. Now Xiao Ming's position in Xiao Wangxun's heart is far more than him. After all, Xiao Ming can now control the safety of the north. It was precisely because he was afraid that Xiao Ming would continue to grow stronger that he would send a rotten army in the Battle of Jizhao, in order to drag Xiao Ming back, hoping that Xiao Ming's strength would be greatly damaged, so that he would be more stable. Only the plan failed again. Nephew, this matter is indeed the uncle's dereliction of duty, but the uncle didn't expect that this mountain-shaped camp would be so vulnerable. After all, this mountain-shaped camp is the trump card in the hands of the uncle. Wei Wang said with a distressed look. Ace. Xiao Ming became more and more angry. This King Wei didn't even cry without seeing the coffin. Uncle Wang, do you really think that Xiao Ming is a fool? Don't you know anything? The king of Wei continued to quibble. My nephew, this Shanzi battalion is my army, and I know how powerful it is. You must have misunderstood. Looking at the rogue King Wei, Xiao Ming said directly, Uncle, 3 emperors, please come back. Since this is the case, let's talk about this in the court. I think the eyes of the father and the ministers are sharp. When King Wei heard the words, not only was he not angry, but he continued to laugh. My nephew, as long as you don't say it, who would know that there are a group of old and weak soldiers in this mountain camp? Don't be angry, don't be angry. This time Uncle Wang is here with his nephew. Discuss this matter. In that case, Uncle Wang should talk about something practical. I don't have so much spare time to grind my teeth with Uncle San Wang. The despicable behavior of King Wei has annoyed him over and over again. Xiao Ming is very angry, and he is no longer polite to him. Besides, since it is a negotiation, it is impossible to be polite, and if it does not embarrass King Wei, he will not be able to get the benefits he wants. With a sigh, King Wei said, It's what your nephew said you want. Uncle Wang admits it. Everyone is a vassal king, and they all know that the noise in the court is not for their own fiefdom status. After all, the great Yu kingdom is now your father's, the future belongs to the crown prince, and the present me is the future you, so why should we fight for your life and death? Uncle San Huang is finally willing to tell the truth, saying that we are just for our own 1/3 of an acre of land. In this case, your nephew is welcome. The matter of the mountain camp is a big deal here. But it's small. It's not really beneficial to me just to make my father hate the 3rd uncle because of this matter, although the 3rd uncle is indeed hateful, but you and I stab each other with knives will only make outsiders laugh, Xiao Ming said lightly. When King Wei heard the words, he immediately gave a thumbs up. Nephew, you have seen it thoroughly. Last time, Uncle Wang fainted, and Uncle Wang is willing to make amends. Originally, Xiao Ming wanted to command the army of King Wei in the imperial court, but this assassination incident made him change his mind. Even if this assassination was not done by the prince, it must have something to do with other princes. And behind this, there is also the shadow of a different surnamed vassal. Now to him, King Wei is just a fat pig under his nose. You can eat his meat yourself, but there is no need to kill him. It is business to rely on him to support yourself. So he said with a smile, actually, the answer is very simple. As long as Uncle Wei promises that the goods sold by the Qingzhou Chamber of Commerce in Wei will not be taxed, and the local government shall not interfere in the trade of the Chamber of Commerce in any form, and shall not arrest the merchants of the Qingzhou Chamber of Commerce without authorization. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 392 Trade Agreement. The heat in the teacup slowly rose. King Wei's eyes kept rolling, apparently weighing the purpose of these demands. After a long time, he asked hesitantly, only this condition, of course, is not only that Uncle San Huang cannot prevent Qingzhou goods from entering Wei, but no one in Wei can stop it. Xiao Ming said indifferently, the only purpose of this condition is to allow Qingzhou goods to flow unimpeded in Wei. Moreover, King Wei could not levy taxes from the Qingzhou Chamber of Commerce in any name. King Wei nodded. In fact, when Qingzhou goods entered Weidi, he set up cards to collect taxes, which led to the fact that Qingzhou goods that were originally low-priced often doubled in price when they arrived at the destination. However, he did not specifically target Xiao Ming. In fact, Diu collects business tax in this way in the country now. Xiao Ming puts forward this condition, which means that he can no longer collect taxes on Qingzhou commodities for any reason, and he will lose a lot of silver, and the more commodities Xiao Ming imports, the greater his losses. After pondering for a while, King Wei said, my nephew, your move is ruthless. Doesn't this mean that Weidi's money will be earned by you in vain, since it's compensation? Is it because I don't think that the emperor will pay the money? The emperor thinks about it for himself. If he agrees to his nephew, he will draw up a contract. If the 3 emperors don't agree, let's meet in court. King Wei said anxiously, nephew, can't this condition be changed? How about I compensate my nephew with 3 million taels of silver? Xiao Ming shook his head. 5 million taels. King Wei raised 5 fingers. Xiao Ming still shook his head, gritting his teeth. Wei Wanggai said cruelly, 10 million taels of supplies. Hearing this number, Xiao Ming's eyelids lifted, but he still shook his head. But he was surprised that King Wei understood the harm of this agreement to his fief, and would rather give him 10 million taels worth of materials. Unwilling to sign this agreement, Uncle Three Emperors, nephew is only on this condition. It's up to you whether you agree or not. Xiao Ming said, his tone. King Wei was completely discouraged, his expression kept changing, and finally he said, my nephew, would you mind letting me think for 2 days? Of course, Uncle Three Emperors, please, my nephew is not far away. Xiao Ming's expression was cold. King Wei stood up at this moment, looked at Xiao Ming with complicated eyes, and then walked out. Watching King Wei leave, Xiao Ming raised a sneer at the corner of his mouth. He had already thought about this when he came to Chang'an, and this trade agreement was the strategic economic weapon he had prepared for the past 2 years. His products have indeed been very popular in Dao Kingdom, but one thing that makes him uncomfortable is that every time he passes through a fief, his products will be taxed heavily, and these heavy taxes have to make the Chamber of Commerce raise the price of goods. After all, not raising the price is equal to loss. Therefore, under the deliberate targeting, King Zhao's foreign trade income is astonishingly high just in terms of taxes, and the increase in commodity prices also reduces the number of consumer groups. When he summed it up, these feudal lords were like mosquitoes lying on his body to suck blood. And the most important thing was that this kind of behavior would seriously stifle the development of King Zhao's local industry. So after discovering the problem, he formulated this agreement in order to promote this agreement. Not to mention the different surnamed vassal kings, at least his neighbors Wei King and Yuan King must have this agreement. As for other surnamed vassal kings, he will slowly toss. He admitted that he was even a little overjoyed when he learned that King Wei sent Shanzi camp, because it was equivalent to King Wei sending it to the door himself. But the only thing he miscalculated was that Shanzi camp was really fighting 5 scumbags. It should be King Yuan. Below, Xiao Ming took out a stack of paper from his arms. These were the trade agreements he had drawn up. There were dozens of agreements listed above. Once King Wei signed it, it meant that the commodity market in Wei was completely defenseless against him. The high quality and low price will soon completely destroy the low-level business system of Weidi. In the end, Weidi will only become a raw material supply market for him, which is the famous unfair trade of rice for cannons. Outside the palace, King Wei's carriage slowly left. Inside the carriage, King Wei's face was terrifyingly dark, and he clenched his fists like a beast that only eats people. After the carriage ran out for a while, King Wei finally couldn't help but shouted fiercely, Xiao Ming, you are deceiving people too much. Then he looked at a young man in the car. This young man was Xiao Qi, and he never got off the carriage. Seeing that King Wei's face was so bad at first, he wisely didn't ask about it. But now King Wei finally burst out. He sighed, Uncle Sanhurong, I persuaded you not to send Shanzi Ying, but we must do our best to help Xiao Ming defeat the barbarians. But if you don't listen, now that this handle is in Xiao Ming's hands, he will naturally take hold of us. King Wei also regretted the original. He said, I knew this earlier. Why did Xiao Ming's power do us no harm at first? I was just thinking of letting Xiao Ming and the barbarians fight to the death, and we sat in the back and reaped the benefits of the fishermen. Xiao Qi sighed. At that time, King Wei had already mobilized a 150,000 strong army of the fief, waiting for the barbarians to enter King Zhao and capture Xiao Ming. In this way, he could take the opportunity to command King Zhao to defeat the barbarians' tired army. At that time, not only was the credit for defeating the barbarians his, but if Xiao Ming was killed by Bei Shan, the King Zhao would also be his, and the King Zhao city built by Xiao Ming like a steel fortress would also be his. It's just a pity that his plans all came to nothing. What conditions did Xiao Ming put forward this time? Xiao Qi asked. At this time, King Wei told the matter of the agreement, and Xiao Qi also showed a surprised look when she heard that. Uncle Sanhurong, this agreement is really vicious. King Wei nodded with a wry smile. Why doesn't this king know that local goods in Wei are still subject to taxation? According to Xiao Ming, he is guaranteed to make a profit without losing money. Xiao Qi sighed again and said, Uncle Sanhurong, what if this is the case? I'm also disturbing, although most of Wei's taxes come from farming, but this matter is a big hidden danger after all. But if you don't agree, I'm afraid this time will be an endless battle, and now King Zhao has no threat from Yao Zhao barbarians. I'm afraid Xiao Mingtang will take care of us. Xiao Qi rolled her eyes and said, Uncle Sanhurong is now a knife to stretch his head, and a knife to shrink his head. I am afraid we have to sign this agreement, but since it is a negotiation, even if we sign it, we can't lose all of it. Signing is fine, but the muskets and hot air balloons used by Xiao Ming to defeat the barbarians. King Wei immediately reacted. He looked at Xiao Qi admiringly and said, Yes, you are still thoughtful. Chapter 393. A bright moon hangs on the treetops, and under the silver moonlight, Everything in the palace appears hazy and mysterious. Xiao Ming was assassinated, and the prince was imprisoned, but in just one day and one night, the city of Chang'an was already turbulent. Your Majesty, the Empress has been kneeling outside for half an hour. How can you be so exhausted if you kneel down again? Feng Deshu looked at Xiao Wangxun, who was pacing back and forth. Xiao Wangxun had been very irritable since returning from the East Palace. He knew that the matter of the prince hiding the barbarians in the East Palace this time made Xiao Wangxun confused. Let her kneel if she likes to kneel. If she hadn't doted on the prince so much, would the prince be so unbearable? Xiao Wangxun said angrily. Feng Deshu shrank his neck. This time Xiao Wangxun seemed to be really angry. With a sigh, he continued, Your Majesty, not for Queen Zhao, but for the dragon embryo in the queen's belly. Xiao Wangxun frowned, then remembered that Empress Zhao was already pregnant. He snorted coldly, and said, Let her come. And Feng Deshu nodded. He knew that Xiao Wangxun was only angry with Queen Zhao because of the prince, but he still cared about Queen Zhao from the bottom of his heart. He has followed Xiao Wangxun since he was a child, and he is very aware of Empress Zhao's position in his heart. Many people think that Xiao Wangxun supports the prince many times because of King Zhao, but few people know that this is just one of the reasons. The real reason is that Xiao Wangxun's favorite in this palace is Queen Zhao. When Xiao Wangxun was still a prince, he and then Prince went to Zhaoland at the same time. It was at that time that they met Empress Zhao, who was known as the first beauty in Zhaoland at that time. At that time, the prince and Xiao Wangxun fell in love with Queen Zhao at the same time, and then the barbarians invaded, and Queen Zhao was besieged by the barbarians when she was saving relatives. It was Xiao Wangxun who rescued the Queen Zhao alone. During this time, the two gradually developed feelings for each other. However, at that time, King Zhao valued the prince and tried to obstruct it, but Queen Zhao pressed her to death, and finally King Zhao finally agreed to the marriage. Afterwards, Xiao Wangxun went to war everywhere, with outstanding military achievements, and he was increasingly favored by the emperor, and the ministers also praised Xiao Wangxun well. Under such circumstances, the prince gradually revealed murderous intentions towards Xiao Wangxun, and secretly believed that then Kang Wang took advantage of Xiao Wangxun to go to Jizhao to suppress the rebellion and set up an ambush to kill Xiao Wangxun. However, this secret letter was obtained by Xiao Wangxun. Since then, he has completely strengthened his determination to seize the throne. After returning to the dynasty, he launched a mutiny to force the prince to commit suicide, and the former emperor was imprisoned in the cold palace. Recalling the past, Feng Deshu couldn't help sighing in his heart. Too many unbearable things were ignored in his heart, worth it and not worth it, but now it has become a cloud of the past. Arriving at Queen Zhao's side, Feng Deshu carefully helped Queen Zhao up and said, Madam, Your Majesty is in a fit of anger, so be careful when you speak. Empress Zhao wiped away her tears. She followed Xiao Wangxun when she was 15 years old. Now that 30 years have passed, she naturally understands her husband. She nodded lightly and said, Thank you Feng Shilin for reminding me. Feng Deshu smiled lightly, helped Queen Zhao to the door of the imperial study, backed out by himself, and stood guard at the door inside the house. Xiao Wangxun just glanced at Empress Zhao, who came in, and ignored it. Empress Zhao smiled bitterly and said, Is the emperor still resenting his concubine for protecting the crown prince? Xiao Wangxun snorted and still did not speak. Upon seeing this, Queen Zhao said sadly, Your Majesty, do you think that the concubine is really only for the future throne of the prince? Of course the prince was wrong this time, but if he assassinated the king of Qi, how could he hide the assassin in the East Palace? The second prince was just murdered by a traitor, and there is probably a battle for the throne behind this. In the end, you still want to keep the crown prince's position. I don't know that the prince is just being used by others, but this barbarian is indeed hidden in the East Palace to play. So stupid, how can I hand the great Yu kingdom to a man such a disgraceful prince? Empress Zhao said slowly, My concubine understands that the prince is not good enough, but hasn't the emperor's assassination made it clear to the emperor? The prince is still there, and there are people who want to kill Xiao Ming to deal with the prince. If the prince is abolished, take it, what methods will these princes use to kill each other? And if any prince ascends the throne, how will they treat King Qi? Don't forget, Your Majesty, when you tried to get rid of King Kang, it almost ruined the world. Yu-Gi-Oh! Although this is a dangerous tactic of military operations, and the barbarians will not continue to go south, but you haven't had a better day in your heart these years, haven't you? To shut up. Xiao Wangxun was furious, and Empress Zhao's words hurt Xiao Wangxun's heart. At that time, it was he who secretly ordered the Forbidden Army to stand still, which led to the barbarians being able to capture the 16 states of Yan'an, and the reason why he did this was because of the secret order of the prince back then. Your Majesty, Your concubine knows that you don't want to bring this up, but please think twice, now that these princes are going to kill King Qi, and how will they treat King Qi after they ascend the throne? I'm afraid these princes will also collude with the barbarians. The king is dead. If that time comes, the barbarians will definitely not give the great Yu country another chance, and there will be no next king of Qi who can resist the barbarians. Queen Zhao said word by word. HMPH, other princes would kill Xiaoming, wouldn't the crown prince not kill King Qi? Didn't you see the prince's attitude towards King Qi when you were in the East Palace? Chen and concubine can ask the prince to make a vote to the princes. If the prince breaks his promise after ascending the throne, everyone can kill him. Empress Zhao said solemnly, but please ask the emperor to let King Qi and other princes also vote. Name, put your name. Xiao Wangxun's color changed slightly. This name vote was an oath made by Gaozu and 7 other vassal kings with different surnames at that time. In order to prevent the brothers from killing each other, the vote for the name stipulated that if the brother was killed, the brother would be killed then. The time when the nomination certificate was used again was in the period of Emperor Gaozu. At that time, the battle for the throne was the most severe. Before his death, the emperor asked the princes to set up the nomination certificate and made it known to the world. Emperor's throne. It's just that Xiao Wangxun understands that this registration certificate is just a contract, and it is only up to the prince to abide by it, and he cannot use the registration certificate as a panacea. Empress, you take your name submission too seriously. Xiao Wangxun shook his head. A woman's opinion. Empress Zhao was still very persistent. She said, the concubine naturally knows that this certificate of entry cannot completely restrain the other princes, but the concubine can guarantee that the prince will fulfill his promise, and His Majesty can list King Qi as the executor of the certificate. If the prince breaks his oath, King Qi can raise troops to conquer the prince. Chapter 394, Decision. P.S. 4 chapters will be released first, and 2 more chapters will arrive later. The candles in the imperial study flickered. Xiao Wangxun fell into contemplation. He knew very well what would happen after the abolition of the reserve. The prince was the eldest son, and he was the direct son. He was justifiably named emperor in the future. If the prince is abolished, the remaining princes will not settle down. After all, at this time, the princes rely on their respective abilities rather than the order of elders. He glanced at the empress, and understood that Empress Zhao moved out the name certificate just so that he would not waste the deposit and learn from the practice of the emperor. After all, the symbolic meaning of the name certificate is greater than the actual meaning, speaking of which, deep down, he didn't want to abolish the reserve. The crown prince was his first son, and Empress Zhao was also his favorite woman. What reason would he have to hand over the throne to someone else? It's just that the prince is making such a big noise now gives him a headache, because the next thing that must be asked to depose the prince is constantly being sent up. Your Majesty, if the crown prince is really abolished, then the mastermind behind the scenes will really succeed. Empress Zhao's eyes flashed with a strange light, and he knew very well what Xiao Wangxun was thinking at this time. But how should I explain to the monarch and minister? Xiao Wangxun's thoughts loosened. Empress Zhao was overjoyed when she heard the words and said, Your Majesty, the crown prince said that he only has this ambitious man, but he wants to be a barbarian Khan, and Gaozu didn't want to conquer the barbarians and let the barbarians surrender to Dongyu. At the foot of the country, that's what the prince said? Xiao Wangxun's expression softened. That's right. After His Majesty left, the prince told his concubine like this. As for this assassin, it's just that the prince's scrutiny was not strict, and the barbarian assassin was mixed in, and the prince was also framed. Xiao Wangxun nodded, his expression returned to normal, and seemed to be somewhat satisfied with the prince. You are right, these princes should be allowed to enter the palace to sign the nomination form. Whoever pushes 3 or 4 will have a guilty conscience, even if it is not the mastermind this time. Must be misguided. The smile on Empress Zhao's face suddenly burst into bloom, and what he wanted was Xiao Wangxun's words, Your Majesty, even if this certificate is not very useful, as long as Your Majesty puts on the Great Seal of the Jade Seal, it is also the Emperor's order. And since then the country will be greatly affected. The battle for the throne can also rest. Doesn't this not only preserve the crown prince's position, but also stabilize the Great Yu Kingdom? Xiao Wangxun nodded, You are right. Tomorrow I will let the princes enter the palace, and I will take Yang Zhen to test them one by one. Empress Zhao said with a smile. This Yang Zhen is a master at observing words and expressions. I can't say that I can see some clues. Your Majesty, it's getting late, so don't think about it anymore. Really? Go, let me take a look. Xiao Wangxun helped Queen Zhao out of the imperial study and walked towards the harem. The old son Xiao Wangxun is also very happy, especially since Empress Zhao is pregnant. He feels that this is a kind of blessing from God. The next day, an imperial order was passed to every prince in Chang'an City, and Xiao Wangxun wanted to summon the princes in the imperial study because after the assassination incident, every prince was a little nervous, but the emperor's order could not be violated, so they still went to the palace outside the imperial study. Xiao Ming met the princes, the crown prince, the second prince, the third prince, the fourth prince, the king of Shu, the sixth prince, and a total of 7 adult princes. The princes did not speak when they gathered together, and all of them had confusion on their faces at this time. The third prince leaned over to Xiao Ming and said, "The seventh brother is also here. It seems that the father and the emperor did not summon us to assassinate us. It's not necessarily for the seventh brother to identify the murderer, but I don't know who is so courageous to assassinate the seventh brother." "Seventh brother, have you offended someone?" Xiao Ming looked at the fourth prince. "This guy has a precedent," he said. "I have offended many people. It is possible for anyone." "Fourth brother, are you right?" The fourth prince's expression changed greatly when he heard the words. He snorted and stopped talking. "It's true, but you don't have to bother us." The king of Shu sneered. He was good in the fief, but because of the reward of Xiao Ming, he was called to Chang'an at this moment. Feng Deshu came out of the imperial study, and he said to the prince, "His Royal Highness, the emperor will let you in." The prince seemed to be confident, and entered the imperial study proudly. He had already learned about this in advance in the imperial study. Xiao Wangxun picked up the jade seal and stamped it on the certificate of entry. He had already written the content in the morning. When he saw the prince coming in, he said, "Prince, come here." Hearing this, the prince quickly walked a few steps to Xiao Wangxun. At this time, Xiao Wangxun said, "Prince, I hope what you said is true. Otherwise, even if there is a registration certificate, I can abolish you." "Royal father, my son remembers it. I will definitely be diligent in government affairs in the future, and solve problems for the royal father." "Okay, let's sign your name," Xiao Wangxun said. In fact, to him, it doesn't matter whether the prince's words are true or not. The assassination incident against Xiao Ming this time completely sounded the alarm for him. After signing the name, the prince slowly exited the imperial study. Feng Deshu walked out at this time and let the second prince in outside the door. Everyone looked at the excited prince. All of them looked surprised, but what made everyone even more surprised was that the prince actually handed over to them one by one. "Third brother, fourth brother, seventh brother, take the first step for brother," the prince said, especially when he walked in front of Xiao Ming. The prince said with a smile, "Seventh brother, there were many offenses in the East Palace yesterday. I hope that seventh brother will not mind. I thought it was the seventh brother who wanted to harm me. It doesn't matter, as long as the prince's brother doesn't misunderstand." Xiao Ming felt strange, not knowing what medicine the prince took. After saying hello, the prince left alone, and after a while the second prince came out with a livid face. Then came the third prince, the fourth prince, and each prince went in nervously, and finally came out with a black face. "Your Highness, it's your turn." Now it was Xiao Ming's turn. Entering the imperial study, Xiao Ming went straight to Xiao Wangxun. Xiao Wangxun just asked Xiao Ming to take a look at the application form first. Xiao Ming was a little surprised. He looked carefully. When he saw the bottom, he saw the names of the prince and others. "Minger, you must have heard about the name submission," Xiao Wangxun said earnestly. Xiao Ming was a little helpless. He did not expect that Xiao Wangxun called all the princes here for this matter. No wonder the prince would be so happy. It turned out that this was a contract for other princes to give up competing for the throne. "Royal father, Gaozu also made a certificate in the past, which is a good story among the people." Xiao Ming said, "That's right. The purpose of this submission is to prevent brothers from competing. You are a smart person, and you should understand what your father means." Xiao Wangxun's eyes were bright. Chapter 395 Royal Merchant Treatment. There was silence all around, and a cold sweat suddenly broke out from Xiao Ming's back at this time. His cornered light swept to the door inside the imperial study, which was connected to the outside. If he didn't sign at this time, he seriously doubted that there would be soldiers rushing out to kill him on the spot. After all, this episode has been staged more than once in history. In order to ensure the throne of the eldest son, the emperor forced the powerful prince to swear not to rebel, but Xiao Ming did not expect such a thing to happen to himself, and he had to sign this vote. "But this shows how much Xiao Wangxun dotes on the prince my son signed," Xiao Ming said almost without hesitation. Xiao Wangxun looked at Xiao Ming with satisfaction and said, "Minger, You are the most straightforward person to answer so far. The royal father is not wrong this time. It seems that there is nothing wrong with letting you be the executor. You can rest assured, as long as you sign the nomination form, after the crown prince ascends the throne, he will definitely be hesitant about the oath to vote for the name, and I also hope that you can do your duty, so that the country of Great Yu will be stable. Xiao Ming actually wanted to say that when a contract was created, it was torn up. If this contract did not have a strong executor, it would be equivalent to waste paper. This contract will be very useful when Xiao Wangsun is reincarnated, because once violated, he will face the situation of breaking his oath and be killed, but it is difficult to say whether this effect is still in effect after Xiao Wangsun's death. Now Xiao Wangsun chooses him as the executor of the certificate. One is that he does not have any clan background, and the other is that he holds Shanhaiguan and has enough chips to threaten other prince's father. The sons have always been part of their duties. I only hope that the Great Yu Kingdom can unite to defend against the barbarians. I hope that this submission will allow the brothers to abandon their previous suspicions and deal with the barbarians. Destroying the barbarians is not so easy. Xiao Wangsun nodded and said, "My father is for this purpose." After a pause, he continued, "You have made such a contribution. You were assassinated as soon as you arrived in Chang'an, and now I have asked you to submit a certificate. I am really ashamed of you, so let's talk about what you want. What kind of reward? I will definitely promise you what I can achieve." Xiao Ming didn't care whether he signed the nomination certificate or not, and it was even beneficial to him to sign the nomination certificate. What he really wanted was a stable development environment, and he also wanted to be able to gather the strength of the Great Yu Kingdom to fight the barbarians. He didn't want to be an ambulance and put out fires everywhere. Now that Shanhaiguan has given him a layer of security, it would be even better if the princes could settle down. After pondering for a while, Xiao Ming said, "Father, my son does have an unkind request to go to Chang'an this time. Let's hear it." Xiao Wangsun showed an interested look. Xiao Ming said, "My son hopes that the products of the King's Hao Chamber of Commerce can travel unimpeded in the royal fief without being charged any taxes. I wonder if the royal father can agree. Isn't this the treatment of royal merchants?" Xiao Wangsun said yes. What Urchin wants is the treatment of the royal merchants. Xiao Ming nodded. On the royal land, only the royal merchants were not charged any taxes, and no official dared to offend them. What's so difficult about this? I promised you, but is this really the only one? Xiao Wangsun couldn't believe it. He didn't care about the businessman. "Thank you, father." Xiao Ming's heart almost jumped out. He did not expect Xiao Wangsun to answer so smoothly. Xiao Wangsun nodded, and then he said to Xiao Ming, "This is just a small matter, but I think this award is too small for your credit. My son is already content." Xiao Ming declined and said that he did not dare to ask for anything else. In his opinion, this was just a test by Xiao Wangsun. If he asked for too much, Xiao Wangsun would definitely feel uneasy, because it meant that he was too ambitious, and this royal merchant treatment may not be very important in Xiao Wangsun's view. After all, Xiao Wangsun has been promoting agriculture and suppressing business. It is precisely because of this that the status of businessmen in the Great Yu Kingdom is so low. Xiao Ming's answer made Xiao Wangsun look of admiration again, and then he said to Xiao Ming, "By the way, this time it is said that you use the new firearm, something called a hot air balloon in Jizhao." "That's right. The name of this firearm is a musket. This time I brought a batch, and I also brought this hot air balloon. The emperor can show it to the emperor at any time." Xiao Wangsun became more and more excited, and he said, "Okay, since that's the case, the emperor will announce the reward for you tomorrow morning, and then go watch it." "Yes, royal father." Xiao Ming nodded, and he didn't care about the rest, because he had already achieved his goal. After a few more words with Xiao Ming, Xiao Wangsun asked Xiao Ming to leave, and called the 8th prince in. Again leaving the imperial study, Xiao Ming walked outside the palace with a wry smile. When he came to Chang'an this time, he encountered all kinds of absurd things, but whether it was an assassination or a name call, it couldn't interrupt his plan as long as the trade route is opened up, and when he returns to the fief, that is when his fief takes off. When he used Yao's Hao, King's Hao, this vast land to develop, he didn't care about the name. Leaving the palace, Xiao Ming thought that it was time to find King Yong. It is estimated that the fiefs of King Wei have not escaped, and King Yong is even less likely to escape. Now there is no problem with the scope of the royal family, and the rest is the fiefs of vassal kings with different surnames. However, this problem is difficult, but for him, no matter how difficult it is, he must try it. After all, the rich land in the south is very important. As for what the chips to be exchanged are, he already has an idea in the imperial study. After the 8th prince reluctantly signed his name and left, Xiao Wangsun looked at the man beside him and said, "So, did you see anything? This person is Yang Zhen, the commander of Lijiangmen." He said, "Apart from King Qi being so refreshing, the other princes are a little unwilling, especially the second prince, who seems to have resentment in his unwillingness." Second prince. Xiao Wangsun narrowed his eyes, and he felt the same way. "Do you think this assassination was done by the second prince?" Yang Zhen said, "Xiaoguan has sent people to investigate the source of these barbarians, and found that these barbarians were all provided by a Shaanxi merchant. But the strange thing is that this Shaanxi merchant who was very close to the prince in the past has disappeared without a trace." "Shaanxi merchants?" Xiao Wangsun said in surprise. Yang Zhen nodded. "The merchants in King Liang's fief are called Jin merchants. These merchants have the closest relationship with the barbarians, and outsiders can't sell these mixed-race barbarians. However, this does not mean that the second prince did it. After all, many of these Shaanxi merchants are minions of the barbarians." Chapter 396 Signing an Agreement. Only Yang Zhen and Xiao Wangsun were left in the room. On Yang Zhen's face, a knife scar runs from the left face across the right face. If ordinary people see it, they will be frightened. It's just that Xiao Wangsun not only did not show any disgust, but his expression softened when his eyes stayed on the scar. It was Yang Zhen who blocked a knife for him on the battlefield that year that left this scar, and it was because of this that he trusted Yang Zhen so much. It's just the emperor. If it's really what the second prince did, I'm afraid it's the emperor who is in trouble, Yang Zhen said suddenly. Xiao Wangsun nodded lightly, and Yang Zhen talked about the point of this issue. Even if it was the second prince, the best outcome would be to reduce the big and small matters to the same as before. For so many years, he has dealt with disputes between princes like this. After all, they are all his flesh and blood, and the palms and backs of his hands are all flesh. This matter has not yet been concluded. You should investigate it clearly." Xiao Wangsun said lightly. Yang Zhen bowed and said yes, and left the imperial study with a sigh. Xiao Wangsun shook his head at this time and murmured, "Erlang, don't force me to do it." Leaving the palace, Xiao Ming went straight to King Yong's residence. Just as he thought, King Yong readily agreed to Xiao Ming's conditions. The only reward was that Xiao Ming helped conceal the truth of the Battle of Jizhao and added 5-10 guns compared with a trade agreement and 50 artillery pieces. This is just a drizzle to Xiao Ming, and the contract he made with King Yong is a little different, and that is about minerals. Speaking of which, King Yong's fief has extended to today's Shaanxi, a place rich in coal resources. In the agreement he signed, there were 12 areas of coal mining rights, and these 12 coal mines were later famous high-quality open-pit coal mines. Although there is coal near King Zhao, the coal mines are deep and of poor quality, so he has been fighting King Yong's idea, and the Battle of Jizhao gave him this opportunity. Otherwise, it would be really difficult to deal with King Yong's character, but now it's different. In his opinion, King Yong is not only begging for himself in war, but since he has seen the power of artillery and muskets, King Yong cannot put it down. He thinks that in order to get these weapons, King Yong is willing to sell his trousers. Not to mention some coal mines that nobody cares about. After all, the amount of coal used in the Great Yu Kingdom is not large, and many coal mines do not need to be mined. These things are worthless to King Yong, and it is better to exchange for some practical things. My nephew, I have signed this agreement, and you can take whatever you like on the uncle's fief in the future. King Yong laughed. In King Yong's view, Xiao Ming is just a fool, but he has to thank this fool, because Xiao Ming not only collected 400,000 to 500,000 victims of his fief to help him solve the famine problem, but also gave him a bunch of artillery. What a valuable coal mine is for the free circulation of commodities, he doesn't care at all. The merchants are just pariahs to him, and giving this treatment is just equivalent to adding a chamber of commerce similar to the royal merchants. The fourth emperor's uncle is so refreshing, really touched my nephew's heart. If nothing else, let's give this to the fourth emperor as a gift. Xiao Ming put a box on the table. The box was opened, and inside was a short-barreled musket, which was a short-barreled arquebus. Nephew, this is the musket? Why is it different? King Yong probably had seen the flintlock gun, but he didn't know the specific structure, but he also knew that the musket was long, and this musket was too short. Uncle fourth emperor, can your nephew give you some common things? Those are just used by soldiers, and this kind of musket symbolizes power and status. Xiao Ming said. King Yong immediately scratched his ears and cheeks with joy, and he gave Xiao Ming a thumbs up. It's better for your nephew to treat your uncle while speaking. King Yong picked up the musket and played with it. At this time, Xiao Ming introduced the use of the musket to King Yong. After all, he helped him fire the first shot. After seeing the power of the musket, King Yuang loved it more and more. After confirming the content of the agreement with King Yuang, Xiao Ming returned to the palace. After getting King Yuang, Xiao Ming was thinking about who to look for next. At this time, King Wei came again and agreed to the content of the agreement, but the premise was the supply of muskets. Xiao Ming naturally agreed to this question. He didn't know how to practice the musket formation. The muskets in the hands of these people were nothing but fire sticks. What's more, the king of Chu was already secretly equipping muskets. Arming the king of Wei at this time could suffocate these southern vassal kings. My nephew, in order to make the agreement more specific, why not write this into the agreement? King Wei was always worried about the musket, and after hesitating for a long time, he still requested that the musket be included in the agreement since its uncle's request. Nephew should write it into it. Xiao Ming laughed, like a little fox. As long as this pact is in force, he rules the trade. A few guns are nothing. The agreement was redrawn, Xiao Ming and King Wei officially signed, and the trade agreement was basically settled. After dealing with the matter, King Wei said, "My nephew, in addition to the musket, it is said that my nephew also has a hot air balloon. When will the uncle be an eye-opener? You don't need to wait, we can see you tomorrow morning," Xiao Ming said with a smile. The next day, he went to the morning court with the officials. As agreed, Xiao Wangsun gave him the title of Prince of Three Pearls, and ordered the King's Hao Chamber of Commerce to enjoy the treatment of imperial merchants. It seems that because of Xiao Ming's great contribution here, the courtroom was surprisingly quiet this time, and none of the courtiers objected to Xiao Wangsun's decision. But after thinking about it, he realized that these courtiers were probably secretly happy, thinking that Xiao Wangsun deliberately suppressed Xiao Ming and only gave the royal merchant treatment. They did not know that this was what Xiao Ming and Xiao Wangsun agreed in advance. King Qi, it is said that you also used two very powerful weapons in the Battle of Jizhao. Can you show it to us? After announcing the award, Xiao Wangsun said with a smile, this is what he is most looking forward to today. Of course, the things are outside the palace, please allow them to come. And that's right, Xiao Wangsun said. At this time, Feng Deshu immediately shouted, the goods brought by King Qi have entered the palace. Following his shouts, one after another sounded and continued to the gate of the palace. At this time, the carriage behind Luo Xin, who was waiting outside, said, enter the palace. Liang Yubin and He Cheng nodded and followed Xiao Huangmin, who led the way to the palace. At this time, Xiao Wangsun and the ministers were waiting for them in the square in front of Chengqing Hall. Razin, let's get started, Xiao Ming said to Luo Xin and others. Luo Xin nodded and immediately took the musket out of the box. Liang Yubin and He Cheng also began to prepare the hot air balloon. Chapter 397 Evaluation. On the square in front of the Chengqing Hall, the ministers surrounded Luo Xin and his party in the shape of a crescent moon. Xiao Wangsun and Xiao Ming stood in the middle of the meniscus watching Luo Xin take out one long stick-shaped weapon after another from the wooden box. Xiao Wangsun looked surprised. He said to Xiao Ming, Minger, is this a musket? Yes, father, this is the gun used in the Battle of Jizhao. It's actually very simple, but it's just a small gun. The 10 muskets that Xiao Ming brought this time are all arquebuses, and there is an arquebus at the position of the gun. In combat, it is necessary to ignite the arquebus to launch, and this is the disadvantage of the arquebus because firing requires a match. The shooter often has to carry several meters of match on himself. When the weather is wet, the match rope is extremely difficult to ignite. Generally, the musketeer will ignite both ends of the match rope in order to fire a second shot at any time. Only in this way, a match rope cannot be burned for a long time, and it is easy to can't be used during siege because there is no matchstick. Another disadvantage is that the lit match is easy to find at night, which makes it difficult to carry out sneak attack operations at night. In general, it was so many disadvantages of the matchlock that led to the rapid elimination of the matchlock after the appearance of the flintlock. Now Xiao Ming is ready to sell the matchlock gun because he is confident in the advantage of the matchlock gun over the flintlock gun. Well, it does seem like the artillery has shrunk. Minger, you are so smart, doesn't this mean that every soldier has a cannon in his hand now? Xiao Wangsun laughed and was extremely happy. Due to the lack of horses, it was difficult for the Great Yu Kingdom to defeat the barbarians in the wild. Now the appearance of this new type of weapon immediately gave Xiao Wangsun hope. These days, he attaches great importance to the firearms battalion, and now there is a new type of weapon installed. He is naturally excited. Xiao Ming echoed with a smile and said, although it is a reduced artillery piece, its power will also be greatly reduced. At this time, Luo Xin had already handed over all 10 arquebuses to the soldiers. When they were in King's Hao, these soldiers had already practiced a firing process of arquebuses, So after they got the arquebuses, they were very skilled in loading them and just waited for them to be fired ready. Xiao Ming gave Luo Xin a wink at this time. Launch. Roxan shouted at this time. After receiving the order, the soldier immediately lit the match, and used the match to ignite the gunpowder in the gunpowder pool. With the sound of a bang, a burst of white smoke came out. Xiao Wangsun was startled by the movement of the arquebus, even though he was prepared in his heart, as were the ministers, some of whom even trembled with fright. Oh, the sound of this musket is really not small. Yes, but why hasn't one of the targets been hit? After the arquebus was fired, the ministers began to whisper in today's courtroom. No one of them jumped out to accuse Xiao Ming. One is because Xiao Ming has made too much credit this time. Finding fault at this time is tantamount to finding fault with himself. Secondly, Xiao Ming holds Shanhaiguan in his hand, which means that Xiao Ming holds the safety of the north. At this time, he is a high-level authority, and he is afraid of being attacked by Xiao Ming. After all, Xiao Ming has this ability now. The most important thing is this new weapon and musket. They represent the interests of different gentry clans in the Great Yu Kingdom, but no one wants to offend Xiao Ming, because they are also eager to get this kind of weapon. The comments of the ministers reached Xiao Wangsun's ears, and Xiao Wangsun was also a little embarrassed. He said to Xiao Ming, "Minger, why didn't any of these targets hit father? This musket relies on intensive shooting, which is naturally very different from a bow and arrow. In fact, the accuracy of a musket is not comparable to that of a bow and arrow." Xiao Ming said lightly. The musket was criticized by the army at that time for its unstable performance during the exchange of hot and cold weapons. Qi Jiguang, a general of the Ming dynasty, once described in detail the funny situation of the musket in the army. Either the soldiers had lead bullets and forgot to reload, or the soldiers were careless. Bullets swallowed, or the soldier holding the gun incorrectly causes the ammunition to slip out of the barrel. Even if the shot is poorly aimed. So many faults eventually led to the Qi family's army only equipped with 2 bird guns, and the rest were cold weapons. Therefore, even if he brought the arquebus this time, it was still a question whether the generals of the band army could see it after the demonstration. Bow and arrow are not as good as, so what's the use of this matchlock gun? After Xiao Ming's words were spoken, a general suddenly spoke up. The other ministers also mean the same. If it weren't for the fact that Xiao Ming relied on the musket to defeat the barbarians, they would be even more disdainful. Luo Quan said loudly at this time, "Your Majesty, a single musket is indeed not as practical as a bow and arrow on the battlefield, but the last commander has seen His Royal Highness King Qi's musket team. Thousands of people form a column to right and shoot, and the musket will emit great power, and a qualified archer needs years of training. But even if an ordinary person can kill a barbarian cavalry with a musket, the barbarian does not lack horses, and the Deu country does not lack soldiers." Xiao Wangsun looked at the blank bullseye and swept the musket again. Luo Quan said exactly what he was thinking. The advantage of the barbarians is the warhorse and the skilled archer, which is the disadvantage of the Great Yu Kingdom, but a musket can make up for this disadvantage. He asked again, "Minger, what is the power and range of this musket?" "The range is not a bow and arrow. Its power is much greater than that of a bow and arrow, and it can penetrate the armor of a barbarian at a distance of 90 steps. Xiao Ming said for him, the purpose of this time he came with the arquebus was to promote this weapon and achieve arms sales. This time, the North has been settled, and now they have signed a nomination certificate. Regardless of whether the nomination certificate is useful or not, the princess should be more honest for the time being. After marrying Fei Yuer back, he basically won't come to Chang'an again. After that, he will fully manage his fief and completely make up for the technological gap with the West. Therefore, when he came to Chang'an this time, he came to seek money, one for a commercial and trade agreement, and one for arms sales. As long as these 2 things are achieved, he can continue to make profits and use the money to upgrade the fiefdom more powerful than bows and arrows. Xiao Wangsun was a little moved by Xiao Ming's words. He pondered for a while, and said, "In this case, it's better to equip a batch of guns to try it out. This time, it's better to equip the firearms battalion with 5,000 muskets. The purchase of artillery has cost millions of taels last time, and it must be expensive to continue to purchase artillery now." So Xiao Wangsun didn't want to buy too much at once, lest the ministers make irresponsible remarks. After all, the firearms battalion that was built at a huge cost is just a decoration, and there is no real record on the battlefield. Moreover, the accurate head of the musket did make him doubt the combat effectiveness of the musket. Chapter 398 Profiteering Hot Air Balloon. 5,000 muskets. Xiao Ming was a little disappointed by this number, but he understood the expressions of Xiao Wangsun and the ministers. After all, They still have doubts about the effect of the musket installation, or they are more distressed for silver. When he was in King's Hou, he heard more than once that the courtiers complained about the price of the artillery, and some ministers even asked the court to allocate funds to their clans' workshops to imitate the King's Hou artillery. These ministers in the court are not loyal and patriotic, but these ministers in the artillery trade do not get any benefit, and they naturally can't stand the flow of white money. Therefore, in Xiao Ming's view, the Great Yu Kingdom has gone into complete corruption. Just like the end of every dynasty party strife, extreme corruption, a large number of profiteers who betrayed the country to seek glory. The people only know the clan and don't know what the country is, and so on. And what impressed Xiao Ming the most was Jin Wuwei. This forbidden army, known as the most elite of the Great Yu Kingdom, was also in arrears several times, and the army's equipment had not been updated for many years. All these things Luo Quan told him personally. Because of this, the failure of the Great Yu Kingdom to defeat the barbarians was not only a matter of horses, but also the oppression of military officers by civilian officials. And Xiao Wangsun has always been wary of the army because it was a mutiny to seize the throne. Speaking of which, it is more about civility than martial arts. Thinking of all these things, Xiao Ming can only sneer to himself. The reason why he wants to sell arms to the imperial court is not only to make money, but also for the future of the royal family, because if he really handed over the technology of muskets and artillery, he could be sure that the money of the artillery and muskets he made would suffer from layer upon layer of deduction, and in the end it would only lead to the banned army holding a batch of garbage firearms that either exploded or misfired. In the end, the cheapest is still other vassal kings. After all, they can sharpen their knives at any time. After thinking about this, Xiao Ming no longer cares about the quantity. This trade agreement is the key point. How much can be sold for arms sales? Anyway, he was going to return to King's Hou after the wedding, and he would stand still regardless of the ups and downs of Chang'an. He only needed to manage his own fief to maintain his own safety. No longer talking about a musket issue, Xiao Ming said to Xiao Wangsun, "Father, let's take a look at the hot air balloon. This will definitely surprise the father." Yes, this is good. Xiao Wangsun looked excited. He was really interested in this hot air balloon that was said to be able to go to the sky at this time. Liang Yubin and He Cheng instructed the soldiers to unload the hot air balloon from the car, and then the two spread the hot air balloon and began to use the bellows to inflate it. It was a long process, and it took half an hour for the hot air balloon to stand up. At this point, the duo began hitting the air beneath the balloon. As the air inside the hot air balloon gets hotter, the hot air balloon that was originally on the ground gradually rises. It's flying. The ministers said excitedly. One by one. Fiji has always been calm, but when he saw such a big thing flying into the sky, he opened his mouth wide in surprise. Xiao Wangsun tried his best to maintain his majesty, but everyone could see how shocked he was at this time. The next thing that shocked them even more happened. Liang Yubin and He Cheng boarded the hot air balloon. After the soldiers loosened the rope, the hot air balloon began to lift off. Minger, this hot air balloon is really amazing. Can I also take a hot air balloon? Xiao Wangsun said excitedly. This can't be done, royal father. This hot air balloon may fall off. Without safety preparations, my son would not dare to let royal father take this risk. Xiao Ming hurriedly explained the reason why Liang Yubin and He Cheng contributed so much is because they dared to take risks in a hot air balloon. Others didn't know the risks of this hot air balloon, but he and the students of the Bow and Blood students knew it will fall off. Before Xiao Wangsun could speak, Luo Quan suddenly exclaimed. He was on the hot air balloon, and when he heard the words, he couldn't help breaking out in a cold sweat. Xiao Wangsun's face was very exciting. The two things that Xiao Ming showed today were terrible. One was that the criterion was not enough, and the other was going to explode. Although the degree of surprise is enough, the actual use is unknown. Glancing at the shocked Luo Quan, Xiao Ming smiled and said to Xiao Wangsun, "Father, do you want to buy a hot air balloon to play with? In fact, as long as you operate it properly, the hot air balloon will still not explode, and it's good to observe the enemy's situation before the battle." That's right, Your Majesty, there was a lot of grass under the hot air balloon. It should be fine when it falls. After all, only 30 steps is enough. Although Luo Quan was frightened, he thought of the heat. The battlefield observation effect of balloons is still heartwarming. After hesitating for a while, Xiao Wangsun looked at Xiao Ming, who looked like a profiteer, and asked, "How much money do you want to sell this hot air balloon to me, father? This is not expensive, just 100,000 taels, and my son can also help father to train hot air balloon pilots. How about it?" The structure of the hot air balloon is very simple, and the cost is less than 3,000 taels of silver. Xiao Ming is also a lion. He has now figured out that instead of being pocketed by these corrupt officials, the money of the imperial court should be pocketed by himself. 100,000 taels? Xiao Wangsun hesitated. Seeing this, Xiao Ming continued, "Father, please wait for the sons and ministers to ask the soldiers to prepare safety measures, and let father personally wait for the hot air balloon to feel whether the 100,000 taels are worth it." After that, Xiao Ming said to Luo Xin, "Prepare the spring pads properly." "Yes, Your Highness." Luo Xin responded, and took out several small spring pads from the carriage and combined them together. Now that King Zhao can produce spring steel, the production of springs is naturally not a problem. So for safety, he asked the workshop to produce spring cushions similar to sofas. The wooden blocks press the springs, and the cotton cushions are installed on the spring cushions. When Luo Xin asked people to assemble it, Xiao Ming stood on the spring pad and jumped up. When he fell, he was bounced by the spring pad and flew up again. What kind of spell is this? The ministers immediately exploded in their eyes. Xiao Ming just jumped, and then he miraculously flew up by himself. Like a ghost. Xiao Wangsun's expression changed greatly when he saw this. Xiao Ming saw that everyone was so surprised, so he said, "Don't be surprised, it's just a spring." As he said that, Xiao Ming came down and opened the contents to the ministers. At this time, Liang Yubin and He Cheng also controlled the hot air balloon to come down. Xiao Ming no longer explained the spring, but let Xiao Wangsun board the hot air balloon. This time, he boarded the hot air balloon with Xiao Wangsun. The two continued to rise, and the scenery of Chang'an City gradually poured into his eyes. Xiao Wangsun was a little scared and a little excited at the same time, but when he glanced at Chang'an City, he gradually calmed down. Seeing the opportunity, Xiao Ming asked, "How about the royal father? This hot air balloon is worth buying." "It's worth it, buy it." Xiao Wangsun laughed. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 399. Over the palace, a huge hot air balloon is rising. Standing on the hot air balloon, Xiao Wangsun took a telescope and looked at Chang'an City easily, like a tiger also patrolling his fifth. "Father, you will definitely not regret buying this hot air balloon. This hot air balloon can not only conduct surveillance and monitor the entire Chang'an City at a high altitude, but also take a hot air balloon to escape in case of danger. 100,000 taels is really cheap." "Yes." Xiao Ming continued to bewitch. Xiao Wangsun was moved just now, but now being persuaded by Xiao Ming again, he suddenly firmed up his determination. He said, "After the wedding, you will return to Chang'an, then I will send you the money, but this is the man who controls the hot air balloon. People, you have to train them for the emperor. Father, don't worry about this." Xiao Ming whispered in his heart, "Father, does the army still need hot air balloons?" "Of course, at least one for my left and right armed guards. This is my personal guard. In addition, how much is your musket?" Xiao Wangsun simply discussed all the issues together. "This musket is cheap. Each musket is 100 taels of silver." Xiao Ming didn't dare to ask for too high a price for a musket. After all, the demand for muskets was much greater than that of artillery. After cost calculation, the price of producing a matchlock gun is only about 6 taels of silver. After all, matchlock guns do not have such a complicated movement structure as a flintlock gun. All they need is a barrel. 100 taels is already a black heart. Merchant price is up, so 5,000 is 500,000 taels of silver. Xiao Wangsun frowned. He weighed the materials of artillery and muskets. In his opinion, one cannon can produce hundreds of muskets. Based on this calculation, the price of the musket should be around 30 or 40 taels, so Xiao Ming must be selling it at a higher price. Although his heart is clear, Xiao Wangsun is not going to bargain with Xiao Ming, but is ready to accept the price. He said, 100 taels are 102, first buy 5,000, and if the effect is good, continue to add. Xiao Ming was overjoyed when he heard the words. He explained, "Father, this is only the price of the gun, not including the ammunition." "I understand, isn't it the same for your artillery?" Xiao Wangsun's eyes were bright, and he suddenly said, "Although your price is high, but I am willing to accept it." "Do you know why?" Xiao Ming's heart froze. He was also surprised that Xiao Wangsun did not bargain this time. The 100 taels were his offer. He thought that Xiao Wangsun would cut it to about 40 taels. "My father is wise, I know everything well, my son is ashamed," Xiao Ming said honestly. Looking at the prosperity of Chang'an, Xiao Wangxun said, because of your credit, from today onwards, I will no longer need to pay tribute to the barbarians. This annual offering of millions of taels of silver to the barbarians is not as good as it is for you. Xiao Ming suddenly realized that he didn't expect Xiao Wangxun to think like this. In this way, Xiao Wangxun made a profit. I would like to see you, the emperor. Xiao Ming smiled. As long as the emperor can support the sun promises not to let the barbarians cross the Shanhaiguan again, and if the barbarians dare to send troops to attack from Zhao again, the sun will dare to lead the cavalry to cut them off. Food. Well, this is exactly what I thought. Now, you are the only one who can fight the barbarians in the Great Yu Kingdom. At this time, the heavy troops are placed in Shanhaiguan, and the barbarians naturally dare not move. Ming'er, the safety of the royal family depends on you alone. I can give you whatever you want as long as it is not too much. I just hope you will not disappoint your father. Xiao Wangxun said bitterly. This was his real thought at this time. He is getting old, and he has been haggard over the years. He doesn't want to experience major changes again. Now he just wants a stable second half of his life. Please rest assured, the royal father, my son will surely protect the integrity of the Great Yu Kingdom. Xiao Ming secretly rejoiced in his heart. Xiao Wangxun's words are an acknowledgement of his current status. As long as it is not excessive, he can give it, which means that he is now a well-deserved celebrity in the front of the palace. Xiao Wangxun nodded with satisfaction and continued, Li Jingmin has found out that the person who assassinated you this time has something to do with the Shanxi merchants of Liang State. There are only two answers now, one is what your second brother did, and the other is the collusion of the barbarians. What the Shanxi merchants did, the father and emperor are currently investigating, and it is estimated that it will not be long before the truth comes out. Second brother. Xiao Ming pondered, and suddenly realized that everything now makes sense. If the assassination is successful, it is true that the second prince will benefit the most. First, whether the assassination is successful or not, it will expose the absurd incompetence of the prince, and once the prince is deposed, he will be the rightful heir. At the same time, if the assassination is successful, he will be able to get rid of his powerful enemy, which is simply killing two birds with one stone. This abacus is too shrewd. It is a pity that no matter how careful the plan is, there are loopholes, otherwise Xiao Wangxun would not have regarded the second prince as a suspect. It's very likely to be him, but we can't make a conclusion yet. This is the crux of this assassination plan. Xiao Wangxun also had a headache. He said, if this is really what the second prince did, you want the father and the emperor. How to deal with it? Xiao Ming wanted to say that he should be executed according to the law, but he suddenly heard an example in the history books. Swallowing back the words he was about to blurt out, he said respectfully, only by the father and the emperor. After all, he is my second brother. He is not benevolent. I cannot be unrighteous. Xiao Wangxun's pupils shrank for a while, and he stared at Xiao Ming for a long time. Then he suddenly smiled and said, Ming'er, you are fine, so I can feel at ease. A layer of cold sweat broke out behind Xiao Ming, and Xiao Wangxun was really testing him. If his attitude is determined to kill the second prince, then Xiao Wangxun must conclude that his heart is malicious and will not take into account the relationship between siblings. If he can kill the second prince now, he will certainly not show mercy to the prince in the future. As such, he has to measure how to treat him now that he is posing as a benevolent and righteous person. Xiao Wangxun is naturally relieved. In this way, he will have a strong executor for the vote, skillfully avoiding Xiao Wangxun's temptation. Xiao Ming felt bitter for a while and didn't know what to say. Xiao Wangxun didn't seem to want to explain, so he said, let's go down. This time you have brought me a lot of surprises, and there are still 10 days before your wedding day. You can push all other things away, concentrate on it. Preparing for the wedding, Fei Yuer is a well-known beauty in Chang'an, and she is also proficient in chess, calligraphy and painting. In the future, she will surely be a virtuous inner helper. You should treat her well. Besides, the Fei family's disciples and old officials are all over the world, and the Fei family is even more. There are many talents. Your fief lacks talents, and now after marrying the Fei family, you can recruit some talents from the Fei family. Xiao Ming heaved a sigh of relief. This matter was avoided, he said. I'll go back and prepare now, urchin. Chapter 400. When the days are free, time seems to pass quickly. After the ceremony was awarded, people from the Ministry of Rites began to come to the door to prepare for Xiao Ming's wedding, and Xiao Ming took advantage of this time to visit relatives and friends to strengthen his relationship with courtiers. Of course, the most important relationship was Luo Quan, Du Boyuan, Qin Rui, Zhu Yashu and others. After all, This is his team in Chang'an. These days, they have been shielding themselves from the wind and rain in Chang'an, especially when the East Palace was searched this time. Du Heng deliberately offered to search the East Palace, because he understood that Xiao Ming was inconvenient to make this request, and what he said seemed reasonable. Of course, this was also what Xiao Ming, Hao, Du Boyan and others knew when they went out to play. In addition to these old friends, there is a difference that there is always a lot of traffic in front of his palace now. Some businessmen who wanted to go to King's Hao to do business came to visit Xiao Ming, hoping to enter the Chamber of Commerce smoothly, and more people came from Chang'an, dignitaries and officials. These officials, ranging from princes and nobles to ordinary officials, all prepared generous gifts and wanted to get acquainted in front of Xiao Ming. In the past, only a few other princes could enjoy this kind of treatment, but now he has finally experienced it, which is enough to see the change in his current status. Days passed by, and Xiao Ming was also busy with his marriage while entertaining all kinds of people. This time, his wedding with Fei Yu'er was set on the 16th day of the month, which is said to be a good day according to the rules of the Great Yu Kingdom. Before getting married, the emperor still needs to give gifts to the princess's house, and at the same time hold a wedding banquet at the princess's house as usual. The Ministry of Rites prepared 50 tables for a banquet, and went to the princess's house to hold a banquet to celebrate, and set up a band of off-duty dukes, princes, ministers, guards, officials of the second rank and above, and their wives. All gathered at the princess's house to attend the banquet a day, and after the engagement banquet, the next day was Xiao Ming's big wedding, which was the wedding of the Great Yu Kingdom. Early this morning, Fiji sent people to send the makeup to the palace. Xiao Ming, on the other hand, arrived in the palace wearing the royal Mang robe for marriage. At this time, Xiao Wangsun, Queen Zhao and concubine Zhen were already waiting for him in the Bishu Pavilion. Xiao Ming, see the father, the queen, and the mother. After speaking, Xiao Ming knelt down on his knees and bowed 3 times and 9 times. This etiquette is equivalent to kneeling to the high hall in the folk. Empress Zhao is extremely happy these days. She has worked a lot for Xiao Ming's marriage, and she also gave Fei Yu a lot of gold, silver, jewelry and silk and satin at the time of the wedding. Seeing these rewards, Xiao Ming naturally knew what Empress Zhao thought. Now that the princes have made their names, the position of princes is stable, and now they have eased their relationship with Xiao Ming. In the future, when the prince ascends the throne, Xiao Ming can also guard the frontier for the prince. King Qi is exempt from the ceremony. Today is your wedding day. Now the entire palace is festive. This palace has not been so lively for many years, but this palace is filled with your joy. Empress Zhao pursed her lips and smiled. Xiao Wangsun is also cheerful. He has never been so relaxed today in more than 10 years since Xiao Ming repelled the barbarians and guarded Shanhaiguan. He obviously felt that the ministers in the court were a lot more honest. Although there are still constant party disputes, not many people pay tribute, and have family affairs, and they are also more towards him. A layer of fear. He knew very well that there was no barbarian threat in the north, so Xiao Ming could free up his hands to deal with them and the masters behind them, because they were also careful. What's more, Xiao Ming has now become the pinnacle of the Great Yu Kingdom, and no one wants to touch this brow again. So Luo Quan and the others' voices grew louder when they went to Fiji in the court. The queen is right. Today is your big day. Not only the queen, but I also have your joy. Let's be flat. You have a lot of things today. Xiao Ming replied yes and stood up slowly. He has always disliked tediousness, but this ancient wedding was the most tedious thing. Xiao Wangsun and Empress Zhao were beaming, but concubine Zhen wiped away tears from time to time. Seeing this, Xiao Ming advised, Mother concubine, today is the child's big day. Why do you always cry? Mother is so happy. From today onwards, you are truly starting a family and starting a business. In the future, you have to manage your business carefully, and come to Chang'an when you have time. Concubine Zhen said. Xiao Ming nodded when he heard the words. If there was anyone in the Great Yu Kingdom who had the most affection for him, it was concubine Zhen. Therefore, seeing concubine Zhen crying sadly, he felt panic in his heart. After the ceremony of kneeling and worshipping, the inner prisoner below is going to marry Fei Yu'er. At this time, Luan Yue had already prepared 8 colored sedan chairs surrounded by red satin, ready to marry the newlyweds. When the auspicious time arrived, Luan Yue carried the sedan chair out of the palace and went straight to the Fei mansion, and Xiao Ming went straight back to the palace, waiting for Luan Yue to bring Fei Yu'er over. Your Highness, congratulations, on the wedding day. All the dignitaries and high officials in Chang'an came to the palace. They prepared wedding gifts and came to congratulate them. Thank you, Xiao Ming said to Luo Quan, followed by Luo Hong, Du Heng, Yu Ming, Zhao Jun and other officials' nephew, Uncle Wang has prepared a great gift for you today, gold and silver jewelry worth 200,000 taels. King Yuang and King Wei came together, and their gifts were pulled by carriages. King Wei also said, "Congratulations to my nephew on the wedding, and a special gift of 300,000 taels." At this moment, Xiao Ming grinned and laughed. This time he realized what wedding wealth is. If there are more weddings, he will not worry about running out of money. "Thank you, uncle. Thank you, uncle. Please, please." King Wei and King Yuang cupped their hands and entered together. Then several carriages stopped outside the door, and the servants who came shouted, "King Runan congratulates His Royal Highness on the wedding of King Qi, and presents a pair of jade ruai, a pair of pearls and treasured hairpins, and 10,000 taels of gold." The King of Chu congratulates His Royal Highness King Qi on his wedding. The King of Huainan congratulates His Royal Highness King Qi on his wedding. After reading the congratulations one after another, Xiao Ming became more and more happy, and this trip to Chang'an seemed to be worth it. At this time, the inner supervisor had already placed a colored sedan chair in the middle hall of Fei's mansion, and Fei Yu'er walked out of the incense pavilion in a red dress with the help of the maid. He slowly got up and down the curtain. Fiji stood outside the door, also constantly welcoming officials who came to congratulate him. With a thick smile on his face, the number of officials who came this time was even more than when his eldest daughter married the crown prince, which made him look bright. The auspicious time has come, when the bearer gets up carrying Fei Yu'er to Xiao Ming's palace. Fei Yu'er in the sedan chair was already crying this time. She didn't know when she would be able to reunite with her family again, and she married far away in Kingzhou and had no relatives by her side. Naturally, she felt uncomfortable, and although King Qi is famous, she doesn't know exactly how, and she can't help but feel anxious and afraid. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.